And we are live.
All right, y'all. Welcome to All Politics and Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. Well, y'all know if it is the fourth Friday, y'all know it is time for the Disciples. And of course, I'm one of your hosts. My name is Ed Riley, not of the Disciples, but of All Politics and Local. I'm actually in tonight with two of the disciples, and of course some of the other co-hosts from All Politics and Local. Of course, my brother Jonathan Austin, and of course my brother Zaid Muhammad. So we're gonna have a number of things going on tonight. Of course, we're gonna get in to some conversation with the disciples about some of the verdicts that went down this week, and of course, where we're headed in terms of socialism and politics in this country and spirituality. So we're going to talk about some of those things with them. And then, of course, coming up at 7 o'clock, we've got some candidates coming in, right, John?
Yeah, we have the South Ward candidate coming on. One of the South Ward candidates coming on. It's supposed to be a really heated race this time. Terrance Bankston is going to be coming on at 7. Then we're going to have Pamela McCarthy from the Essex County. She's from the Essex County Prosecutor's Office coming on at 7:15. And then we're going to have James Harris of the NAACP coming on at 8 o'clock, talking about the last election and voter registration. And of course, at 8:30, we're going to have DJ Rhino and the State of Hip Hop.
All right.
Sounds good.
All right.
So it's a full night.
Yep. So we're going to throw it to, of course, Hakan Ali. Without further ado, of course, it's the Disciples Hour. So it's all yours, my brothers.
Thank you, Brother Ed. Once again, my name is Brother Abdul Haq Muhammad. I'm the student minister of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan for the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad for the Muhammad Mosque of Islam, number 25, which is located here in the city of Newark, New Jersey. And we always deeply grateful and highly honored for this privilege and this pleasure to speak to you all once again. We are here for another week with our show, The Disciples. I have with me my beloved brother and friend, my comrade in the struggle for freedom, justice, and equality. He really needs no introduction, but, I let him introduce himself to us all.
Well, grace and peace be unto you from God, our Father, Lord Jesus Christ, overseer B.R. Ali, a.k.a. the pastor in the hood, senior pastor of the New Psalmist Worship Center located right here in the Brick City, in the city of Newark, on 401 Avon Avenue between 13th and 14th Street. And once again, it's an honor to be here next to the last month of the year. We're finishing out 2021. And that's good to be alive, good to be seen, and able to see back. Let's do it.
Man, praise be to Allah. Reverend Roundtree on yet? Our sister is always working tirelessly, very hard, very diligently in the city of Newark, New Jersey, to improve the quality of life for all of our brothers and sisters who are here in the city. So we thank her for her service. We thank her for her hard work and her dedication. So much has been going on nationally as well as internationally, Brother Ali, Brother Zaid. We know the verdicts that just came down, but I first want to start locally here in the city of Newark, New Jersey. I don't know if you all are aware, but Mayor Ras Baraka has pledged to illuminate the city of Newark, New Jersey City Hall in orange as part of the United Nations Say No, Unite to End Violence Against Women campaign. Are you aware of that, Brother Zaid, Brother Ali?
Yes.
The 25th, the 25th is the International Day to Eliminate Violence Against Women. That's the background for the call.
Yes, sir. Again, they said it was made in response to inquiry from Zana Club of Essex County in the name of all women and women groups in Newark and New Jersey and many local, statewide, and global organizations and communities will commemorate today and this weekend by recommitting to end violence against women. And we know how imperative and how important that is, Brother Zaid, Brother Ed, and Brother Ali, being very familiar with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. You know that we believe specifically that our women should be respected and protected as the women of other nationalities are respected and protected. There's so much that has happened as it relates to black men and black women in this country in particular. But when we look at what's been going on with black women, I read some statistics which said that in 2021, over 1,200 black women have been killed. They say that a black woman is killed every 6 hours in America. And last year they said that over 1,440 black women and girls were killed in America, and that in 2019, over 918 black women and girls were killed in America. Then, according to the National Crime Info Center, they said that in 2020, of the 268,884 girls and women who were reported missing, over 90,333, or nearly 34% of them, were black. So we know that this is a problem. It has been a problem since our sojourn here in the Western Hemisphere as it relates to what has been done to black people in general, but the black woman in specific. So, Brother Ali, I'll let you chime in on that as it relates to how vital and how necessarily important that this fight is, and particularly among black people.
Oh, it's very necessary fight. When you look at the woman is the seed of creation. She holds the womb that produces life. And when you look at the black woman, our mothers, our grandmothers, as we affectionately call mama and big mama, and that's our sisters, our young sisters. And many times for so long, she's been seen as a chattel, been seen as somebody that could be disrespected, somebody that could be used and abused, somebody that could be given from slave master to field hand. So it's time that we start protecting. It's absolutely necessary that we each man ought to be responsible for all the women in his life. I'm talking about mothers, I'm talking about daughters, I'm talking about grandmothers, I'm talking about aunts, I'm talking about cousins, I'm talking about siblings. Each man ought to take responsibility for protecting our own, which is the cradle of civilization.
Yes, sir, brother Ed. You know, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us, along with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, for years, that a nation can rise no higher than this woman. There are any decent women, there'll never be any decent men, for the woman is the mother of civilization. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has gone as far to say that black people will never get out of this quagmire in the condition that we're in until we have respect for our women, because the woman is the common denominator for any society and any civilization. The woman is God's laboratory. She's the womb, or the vessel that God allows for his creation to come through. So how can we disrespect our women? How can we not have protection for our women? But for too long, we as black men have been able to unprotect ourselves. So we can't protect ourselves. How can we protect her? But this is a fight that we have been dealing with, again, since we've been here in North America. It's not nothing new. Again, it's being broadcast more so today than it's ever been. But this is a fight that we have to take up immediately. I mean, we can't really waste no more time, because again, how can we be considered to be men if we don't protect our women, if we don't respect our women, if we don't live for our women, and if we don't kill for our women? Again, because God uses her to bring forth humanity, to bring forth life. So we disrespect her is really to disrespect God, and to disrespect God is to disrespect self. So this is an important fight. We thank our mayor for taking it up, but we thank all of our freedom fighters, from Marcus Garvey to Noble Drew Ali. So many black great men and great women have taken up this fight to protect and to respect our women. But now we as a people, we have to take up this fight, because this fight is imperative. We know that a documentary just came out on Netflix. Have you seen it, Brother Zaid, Brother Ali, entitled Missing? And it's talking about how black women, are continuously being kidnapped, and they're going missing, but they're not given the publicity or the media spotlight that they could and should be given. But still, that's on us as men. We can't allow our women to just be kidnapped and we not do something. In the 1800s in New York City, when black people were being kidnapped, a brother by the name of David Ruggles, he created what they call the Vigilant Society. The Vigilant Society, when black men and women were being kidnapped out of Brooklyn or out of New York and being shipped back to the South, he said, no, we need a vigilant society, a vigilant committee. And it seems like that's what we need today. We know of the big case, Brother Zaid and Brother Ali, that just happened in East Orange, where our young sister was going missing. We later discovered that she ran away. But this is a problem that needs to be fixed and need to be fixed immediately. but I'll let us chime in on it. But it's just such an important issue.
What a
One of
stress.
the most important issues of our time, really. Sincerely, it is. And we can't just sweep it under the rug,
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that sharpened recently, of course, is the loss of one of our daughters, or I should say granddaughters, because she was young enough to have been my granddaughter, and that was when my soldier Sharif Hotep of the New Black Panther Party and the North Anti-Violence Coalition, when his daughter went missing, and he had to go all the way down
South Carolina
to South Carolina, right? And that he went on his soldier taking charge of his post, right? Met by this national team out of the South, out of the Texas area, came in South Carolina with him. They had to shake that county, I forget the name of the county, right? South Carolina up to make the officials of that territory do what officials have the resource capacity to do to find that child. Of course, unfortunately, we lost the child. The child was found after she had been kidnapped and murdered. But the dramatization of the effort was our area's contributions to raising the sharpening of this paradigm, right? And of course, our mayor is hugely sensitive to this for obvious reasons. The name Shani Baraka Women's Resource Center doesn't fall out of the sky. Shani Baraka was his baby sister who was killed in an act of domestic violence, right? Some of us knew Shani and loved Shani, and loved her a whole lot. It was a horrible deed that went through the heart of a whole lot of us when we lost her better than 10 years ago, right? But he has created an institution, not just something with a name on it, but an institution that is actively servicing our people, our women who are facing these problems. I want everybody also to appreciate who we have coming on in a little while, right? Pamela McCarthy from the Essex County Prosecutors Victim Service Union. They have a whole special unit called the Sanctuary Program. And we're going to talk about that because one of the things that she has been trying to do, and how I got close to her on this piece, is that in trying to build up staff and the volunteer support for it, she's been having a hard time trying to get men, particularly Black men, to participate in this program. So the drum has been sounded. It's on the dignity of the Black man to honor that drum, right?
Well, let me
sounded.
Let me
so
just
we're gonna answer the drum or we're not, or we're gonna betray it.
I see Reverend Roundtree just came in, but see, that's part of the problem. Brother Ed, I don't know if you are familiar with the article that was written in 2015 by the New York Times. We heard our mayor quote it many times. I've quoted it. And in this particular article, it said, where has the Black man gone? And he's gone missing. And in this particular article, they were saying that there were over 1.5 million Black men missing in America. And they said, where did they go? Early death, prison, military. But for the most part, that Black men in the Black community were missing. And they were saying in this particular article that Black women between the ages of 25 and 54 themselves who had not been arrested outnumbered Black men by like 100 to 83 or something like that. The number was. So again, as Black men, how can we protect our women if we ourselves are going missing? If we ourselves are living recklessly? So now our women are just out here without a man to protect them. Again, the statistics say that in 2020, out of the 268,884 girls and women that were missing, over 90,333 of them were Black. So again, we see mass genocide, mass fratricide.
That's the word. That's the word, son.
Relates to the Black
genocide.
Man killing each other off, being killed by the police, but more importantly, killing each other. So if we're killing each other, then our women are left to fend for themselves. So you see many of our women are out here languishing, trying to find their way. Again, it's not a condition that we ultimately put ourselves in, because it's a condition that we've been grappling with since our sojourn here in America.
Yes, sir.
But we have adopted the culture and the way of those that have oppressed us, and now as a people we suffer from internalized oppression, which happens when the oppressed group begins to take on the same characteristics and the same behavior of the group that oppressed them.
Right.
So for 400 years we saw our women raped, we saw our women lynched, we saw our women hung. We saw women being used as tools of sex. So now we saw the slave master doing that to us, and then now we are now doing that to us. So we have to. It's imperative that we, as you said, brothers, we sound this drum, and that we continue to call on the black man to try to raise him in his consciousness as it relates to understanding how important and how vital the woman is to his society and his civilization. Because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad have taught us that you don't measure civilization by the man, you measure civilization by the
That's right.
woman.
That's right.
You measure your civilization and the society by the woman. So if your woman is down, your society is down. If your woman is missing, that's a sign that the man is missing. And if the man is and woman is missing, that's a sign that God is missing. So we have a lot of work to do. I know there's many fights on many fronts, but we have to, get more specific and more intentional to the fight that's right here at home where we live at. In Newark, New Jersey, in East Orange, New Jersey, in Irvington, New Jersey. Sometimes we trying to take on fights that's thousands of miles away, but our own city is suffering. You understand? From an evil that we do have the power to change, and
That's
we have
right.
to just begin to change it. We got to
Well,
keep
I tell you,
pushing.
I'm extremely proud of how that energy that Sharif took south
That's right.
came back home when that child went missing in East Orange.
And
They
can I
went.
say something about that?
Our folks from Newark went into East Orange.
I gotta say something about that, brothers. When
Uh-huh.
I
Go on.
believe,
Yeah, we come back to it.
I
But our
believe in
folks
South
did go
Carolina.
into East Orange. Huh?
I believe in South Carolina where brother Sharif's daughter went missing. What was the statistics in terms of black women going missing in that particular area? Was
They
it
were
like
large. I don't remember
5,000?
the number, but they were large. They
I
were
think it was like
unforgivably large.
5,000.
They were in the thousands.
The racist South.
They were in the
Some of them won't
thousands,
even count it.
and it was hard. And in South Carolina, it was bad across the racial lines, right? It was bad for women, black women, Latinx women, indigenous women, and for white women. The backwardness of sexism is as dangerous and as backwards as racism in many places, right? They weren't giving a damn about women being missing of any stripe, right? But of course, this is one of our children, one of our granddaughters. So we had to make some noise. So that young man took charge of his post and did what he had to do. Coming back this way, when the word got out about that child, and East Orange is a smaller town. It doesn't have the technological investigative capacity that some of these bigger cities have. They put it out and said, yeah, we need help, and young men and women, rallying behind what Sharif did, came out to East Orange, and they got in the street. And their agitated presence in the street made this local story a national story. And when it became national, that's how the child was found. And we thank the God of our ancestors that she was found. And it's a whole new thing coming out about the child's mother. We pray that to the God of our ancestors that it gets resolved and that everybody gets the help that they need, right? But the vigilance that you alluded to, son, from the 1800s, of those ancestors under David Ruckles, that is the answer, right? So we are capable, we have the capacity to answer the drum. Question is whether or not we're going to do it. So I want to be inspired and try and challenge those of us who have yet to be inspired to answer the damn drum because it's being sounded and it's on our watch and it's up to us to do what we need to do.
Yes, sir. I see our wonderful sister, Reverend Roundtree, just joined us along with Sister Donna. Thank you for joining us as we engage in this most important and vital conversation. There's so many topics that we need to discuss, but I just thought that this was, vitally important when we're talking about our women and what has been done to them and what is being done to them and what we as black men in particular need to do, because how can we expect somebody else to respect our women if we ourselves don't respect our women? So that's a very important topic and conversation that we have to discuss, and not just discuss, but try to put things in place, implement things, strategy, procedures, and protocols that will help us to protect our women and that will help our women to protect themselves. Because again, our women are so important to our community. but they have to know that themselves. They have to understand that. And I pray that we will say something that somebody who is listening on this call will hear
Yes,
and will
yes,
be
sir.
inspired.
I'll say one thing, and then I'll
And
step
Minister,
back. I'll say one thing. I'll step back and let you know, and get out of everybody's way. I was supposed to do a call for 100 black men in New York and in the Newark area to come out against domestic violence on the International Day to Eliminate Violence Against Women. But the damn day fell on the holiday, and so that kind of threw off our plans from a practical space and had to do that. But that call is going to be made. That's a call that we are going to try and do sooner than later. But we did want to do it on that day. But with the holiday conflict and all of that energy, we decided just to hold back on it. But the energy is there. We need to build on the energy that has come forward, right? And I hope folks do that. So I just wanted to share that and want folks to pay attention to that, because that the drummer will be sounded again. Right?
and Minister,
Go ahead,
Minister
y'all.
Hawk, yeah, let me add to that. I don't know if it was the last time Minister Farrakhan was here, but I know one of the last times he was here, and he was at Metropolitan Baptist Church, and he spoke. And I want to say, if he spoke for, I don't know, 2 hours, an hour and a half of it was about how we are to treat our women in our community, and he broke it down. He broke it down from the I guess you would say from the macro to the micro, micro to the macro. But I can remember sitting there, and he did. If that was a 2-hour lecture, it was an hour and a half about the importance of our treatment to our women and how it reflects on our community. And I'm sure. I can't think of the pastor's name of Metropolitan Baptist, but I do know
David
Jeff.
Jefferson. Yes, sir.
If there is something that we can get a tape, and replay that, because it was a very poignant message, and it was common, not so much common sense, but it was very basic language in terms of how this affects this and that affects that, and it was all back to how we treat the women in our community.
That's right. So thank you, brothers Aid and everyone, for your participation. Is Reverend Roundtree still on? If she's on, if she want to chime in and say something about, this most important topic. I know we have so many topics that we need to discuss and get to, but we only have an hour, so we definitely want to get to them, but we just don't want to blow past this discussion. We've been blowing past it too long.
Too
And that's
damn
part of
long.
the
You're
reason
absolutely
that we
right,
are in
son.
the condition it's sin, because we have not put the necessary things in place as men that will allow for us to protect our women. So go ahead, Reverend Roundtree.
Come off mute.
Reverend Roundtree.
I know they muted me, so I wanted to listen. Good evening, everyone. Good evening.
Good evening, sugar.
To Brother Ed Riley, of course, to my little brother, my son in the movement, Minister Abdul Haq Muhammad, my big brother, Pastor Ali, Baba, Donna, and all those who are tuned in. Let me say this: one show is not enough to give a lesson or history about what women and how women should be treated, how they have been treated, they're still talking about how we get underpaid for the work that we do. Never mind the abuse and everything else. We can do a job just as good as the next man, but we will be paid 50%, 70%, and 20%, depending upon the position. So we're already undervalued, underrated, and mistreated. This one show is not enough, Pastor Ali, for us to talk about the mistreatment of women. And I do agree, Donna, the message that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan gave at Metropolitan Baptist Church, and listen, they say repetition is the mother of learning. And sometimes you got to say things over and over and over again before folks get it. When you have a child and you tell them the first time, brush your teeth, you got to brush it every morning. They don't just jump right up every morning and go brush their teeth. Some things, when they start walking, they don't just jump up from crawling to walking. Repetition. Sometimes you got to do things. Sometimes we got to hear things over and over and over again. And how sad it is that women who give birth to nations, how you had to pass through a woman to become who you are. Oh, there was some help in the beginning. But you have to pass through a woman, and that same woman you pass through, you turn around and disrespect. Some of this is in the home, some of this is on the job, some of this is in government, but nonetheless, it's all over the world. And in some countries, women don't even have a voice. So all I say, Minister Abdul Haq, is while we're having this conversation, just like we have the peace agreement cards, we might need to print. But man, and Donna, I'm with you. Go pull that tape and let the honorable minister know that we get ready to document those points and put it on the card and pass that out in our communities, especially our urban communities, that a lot of the homes are run by mothers. A lot of the homes are single mothers. I'm not saying that couples don't exist, and I'm not saying that a child has to come up in a two-parent home to be successful, because that's not the case. What I'm saying is there are some points that we need to listen. Don't even look at your mother wrong, or you don't have any teeth at the end of the day. Let alone cuss her out or disrespect her. We have to keep saying this to these young men and some of our sisters. I know their mothers that were drug addicts, alcoholics, depending upon the child. I know some children that would pick their mother up off the street that was falling out, drug addict, whatever the case might be. And then we have some that will walk right past their mothers, without even picking them up. So Donna, I think we should put those points. I think we should go pull that. And I'm serious, Minister Abdul Haq Muhammad. I am so serious to put those points on a card of how we should treat our sisters, how we should treat women. That's what I have to say about that. So thank you for the time.
And Reverend Roundtree, you just brought to me the lyrics of when you was just saying our moms is drug addicts. I think of Tupac's word.
Yes.
Even as a crack fiend.
Yes.
I can't think. She was a black queen.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, that's
right.
I
appreciate you. Yes.
Yeah, and but to that point, that even as you still were a black queen.
That's right. I love you. I appreciate you. He broke it down lyric by lyric. You know, Tupac. Yes, I just heard that the other day. So
that's right.
Since you mentioned Tupac, I got to throw in this party wisdom, because Tupac was the most famous cover of the Black Panther Party, and his mother, his parents was both of a Panther lineage. His mother was a legend in the party. She defended herself legally, and she's not a lawyer, when they came under attack in the New York 21 case, right? Which leads to come to the point that I want to make. One of the things that we did in the party is that the party, you know, the self-defense training was gender neutral. Everybody had to learn how to handle them weapons, males and females. And everybody had to be proficient. The first woman member of the party was Tarika Lewis. Her father was a former light heavyweight champion of the world. Tarika is known as a legendary violinist, but she was a bad marks person and one of the first best shooters that the party had. And she made every male respect her, not just by virtue of her dignity as a woman, but behind her own military self-determining capacity. So as we build up this capacity to defend ourselves, this shouldn't just be the men in this training. Self-defense training is good for some of everybody.
That's right.
All right? So we'll make that plain.
And I'll just put on 2 points with you. Build on that 2 points with you, Zaid, is that if we watch the movie The Black Panther, you don't know my name no more? Yeah, I know, because my thoughts. I'm trying to be fast, but the movie The Black Panther, a lot of the things that were portrayed were built on factual information. And if we remember the Women's Army in the movie The Black Panther, that was based on a factual women's army in Africa. But I also want us, Minister Hawk stopped me. I think about how the Black woman is always under attack. And I was thinking about this discussion I was listening to. You know, we lost Malcolm X's daughter, and how it was the women in his family that were just kind of well, maybe because it was all women too, but they were constantly under attack and challenged. Mother Betty Shabazz, unfortunately, had some challenges with her grandbaby, and then we just found her son. His daughter. They just found her. Last I heard, it was due to food poisoning. But just these challenges that they go after the strong women in our community that we all have to
see the whole thing with that family. Let me tell you something. One of the things that's happening that we're dealing with in our town is healthy. It's trying to become a trauma-informed town, right? And some of the suffering, I dare say, that you have seen amongst the women in the Shabazz family is in my modest judgment, right? Looking at this from a trauma-informed lens as a consequence of the trauma that those kids were born in the trauma, right?
That's right.
The twins were in their mother's womb. Their father was assassinated. The other girls were right there with their mother, witnessing her father being assassinated. The home had been bombed a week before, right? And then there had been other incidents that had happened, in the family since then, right? And some folks respond to trauma better than others, right? But they have gone through a whole train ride of trauma in that family's history that really, unfolded in ways that should be of some illustrative wisdom to all of us. Unaddressed trauma will show up in your body and make you sick. Unaddressed trauma will show up in your behavior that is not healthy.
That's right.
Unaddressed trauma is, and we got a whole lot of our whole community was born in trauma.
It's the disorder.
Your entire household.
That's what reparations is all about. Not just to acknowledge what was done to our ancestors, but give us the resources to repair the damage, the traumatic, colossal crime against humanity that was done to us that we're all still dealing with, because the trauma is not just personal, it is historical. And ain't nobody gave us nothing to endure coming out of the trauma of the transatlantic slave trade, nor the domestic slave trade here in these blood-sucking United States.
Well, speaking of that, let's talk about the trauma of injustice that we as a people have suffered and continue to suffer with the American injustice system. We had some major cases going on in America the past several weeks. One, Ahmaud Arbery, we saw that the 3 Caucasians that were responsible for murdering him were found guilty. Your thoughts on that? Brother Ed, Pastor Ali, I'm going to Brother Ed first. Brother Ed, you being a lawyer, we saw some of the things that was said by the defense attorneys, some of the disparaging language that were used as it relates to Ahmaud Arbery and who he was and his character, that kind of set Black America on fire. So, your thoughts on that, Brother Ed, and I'm going to you, Brother Ed, specifically because this is your field.
Yeah, I think clearly, man. I think that when you take a look at, how this case was being defended, I think that, these folks operated below the belt. And I think that the Bar Association should take a look at that, right? But I think that they were playing to their audience, right? I mean, the buzzwords that they were using, a jury of bubbas, right? Having 11 white jurors and having 1 black juror.
One black
Again,
person, Lord
right?
Jesus.
Again, they're playing right to their audience, and some of the disparaging things they said about Brother Arbery in terms of his fingernails not being clean, his hygiene, and so forth. I seem to remember the brother was out jogging, right? And I don't know nobody who goes out jogging don't get sweaty, especially if you're in the deep South, right? And so just the way that this case was being defended was absolutely atrocious, and that's why one of the defense attorneys is being brought up on charges and just may be disbarred for that, right? And you've got to give credit to the prosecutors. They prosecuted an excellent case, and they gave us a lesson in how a prosecution should go, especially when you have all the evidence on your side. And none of the questions that was asked, particularly of any of the defendants, that they could actually defend against. There was no case for that. So I think it was. I think now the question is we're still yet to see justice, right? That remember they have not been sentenced yet, right?
That's right.
So we need to see what happens with the judge.
That's
Does
right.
the judge, in turn, come and give them the justice? Remember, black folk go to jail for life for committing lesser crimes, right?
That's right.
Let's see if these folks get the time that they deserve based around the charges that they've been convicted on. Because we're talking about felony charges, right? We're talking about felony murder. We're talking about those, and just one of those charges alone carry a life sentence. But we don't know if the judge is above her, right? He might be above her. We don't know that, right? So we still got to keep our eye on the ball, and we've got to see what happens based around that. And let's see what happened with the attorney if she gets prosecuted and if she loses her license, because I think she operated in a sense that that the bar would have to question that, and that's the thing, attorneys, period, can't operate outside of what we call quote ethics end quote, because
That's right.
there's an ethics review, and if you get brought up on those charges, they can in
You
turn
know,
go and say you violated the ethics of the bar.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
I was
Any thoughts on that?
I was excited about the clergy that came forth when they were challenged.
After that statement was made,
I mean, it came from across the country to prove and to show strength and unity. And without photo ops and stuff like that, came together from across the country, and that put the pressure on the whole situation. I believe that put some meat to the bone, and I was just excited about so many. Everybody won't named. You can name 10 or 15 of the clergy, but the other 400 and plus clergy was brothers and sisters who lived this life and who challenged and have to fight social issues in our own local communities. And I felt that was a turning point when he talked about he didn't want to turn, when the lawyer made the remark against the preachers, and when the preachers decided not to fuss, not to fight, not to moan, but come together and show strength in numbers. I felt that was a turning point, and especially strength for the family.
Well, we're taught from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that if you don't know what was, you can't know what is, and you'll be ill prepared for what is yet to come. And I'm pretty sure, brothers, i.e., you remember, maybe you as well, Reverend Roundtree, that in this country, in the 1800s, 1833, Alabama, so many southern states, it was illegal for black preachers to preach except in the presence of one discreet white man. So they always wanted to have a white man in the congregation sitting in order for black preachers to be able to preach, because they felt that the black preacher or the black pastor was a rabble rouser. He was very dangerous. They remembered Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey, so many other great black men who preached the gospel as God would see us preach it, and not as it was being given to us or re-echoing it from the slave master's mouth. So they always wanted to muzzle the black preacher that can give strength to, brothers and sisters on the plantations. So they passed codes and laws which said that no, you can't preach as a black man unless you do it in the presence of a discreet white man. We know in the 1800s, I believe it was Andrew Jackson or one of these. There's been so many racist presidents, but they created what was called a gag order, saying that we could not speak and say certain things as it related to race and segregation. So this has always been the modus operandi and a routine practice of America, particularly as it relates to strong black men and strong black men who could speak a word that will inspire other strong black men and strong black preachers. So what we heard coming from that judge's mouth, that is the routine practice of white folks here in this country as it relates to the black clergy class and those that they could not control. So who they spoke against specifically was, I believe it was Reverend Jackson, Al Sharpton, but we saw many black pastors and preachers come together in unity to go down there and to be defiant. So we thank them for their courage, and we thank them for their strength. You know, but again, what we are witnessing in America is what we have always witnessed in America. And that's why America, I believe from my teacher, is in the condition that she's in. Because you cannot do what was done to us and don't think that you are not going to be judged. Because if God judged those that came before us, as we read Brother Ali and Sister Roundtree in the biblical text, the Quranic text, that he judged Egypt, he judged Babylon for what Pharaoh did to them, how could we not expect that same reckoning or judgment to come on this country for what she has done to us? So I just wanted to say that and throw that in there from a historical perspective, talking about the black pastor or the black preacher and those members who were down there at that time attempting to be muzzled and left out of the courtroom.
I'll add to that in this way, and to your point, son, right? To your historical point. Not only did they single out preachers, but they also, you know, in that trial, and don't forget the Rittenhouse trial too, right? Or you can't identify with Black Lives Matter, or anybody who identifies with Black Lives Matter in any way, disqualified from the jury, right? There are discussions being led by Republican state houses throughout the country. They're banning critical race theory. They're not trying to ban critical race theory. They're trying to ban any serious discussion around real history and race in this country, period. Right? And in the courtroom, they're trying to create a die where if you associate yourself with fighting for social justice, you cannot have a place or a presence in the courtroom unless you're the lawyer or unless you are on trial. Right? So we have so there's so many places where that require our vigilance. Right? And talk about judgment, I would dare say, this is something that we talked about many years ago when I was very much a young man, listening to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. The question of a race war in this country is a very real possibility. And these folks who stormed the Capitol, they weren't coming. They were trying to get at rights about black folks, but they were coming at their own white folks at the Capitol, right? And if they're willing to do that, right, and you see all these armed formations and whatnot going around like this young fool that just beat this child whose mama brought him all the way across state line, right? The boy's from Illinois. He ain't even from Wisconsin. Whose mama brought him to go into Kenosha with that gun and do what he did, right? How come her behind it? Imagine me driving you into Kenosha with a weapon, right? So you could patrol, right? They'd lock you up on site and they'd lock me up for bringing you out there. And we wouldn't be looking at no Mickey Mouse time neither. We would be looking at conspiratorial charges and be looking at life, right? So but meanwhile, this boy on camera popped off 3 boys. He wounded 2. He wounded 1 and killed 2 people. Killed 2 people. Killed 2 unarmed people, and they was both white. Right. So it was the Civil War, right? And then there was the racial pogroms that we had to fight against, dealing with these crazy folks with the emergence of the Klan and all that kind of terrorism that came afterwards. We may need to be seriously in need for preparation to defend ourselves from white folks daring to be that out of their minds again.
And we see
rain. Malcolm said, "Bring your raincoat."
Well, I mean, Booker T. Washington talked about it. Dr. King talked about it. White Backlash. A book was just recently written.
That's right.
I believe by a sister named Carol Anderson, talking about white rage. How
I'd love to get her on too.
She said that I would say, what produces white rage or white backlash is essentially black excellence. That whenever white folks saw us making strides, whenever they saw us coming up, then they begin to get very angry. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan talked about how after Obama won, we began to see the onion of white civility peeled back. because we had thought that this became a post-racial society, that white folks were now opening their arms and becoming more acceptable to us as a people. But we were greatly deceived, and not because I believe that we were just ignorant, but we have become victims of wishful thinking. So one of our great psychologists, Bobby E. Wright, said that the greatest pathology, disease, or sickness in the world is for people to believe in something just because they wish it to be so. So we can wish all that we desire and want, that we are now in a post-racial society. But Dr. King said back then that America, or from the Kerner Commission, you remember, Brother Zaid, that
Yes, sir.
there were two Americas, one black, one white, one separate, one rich, one poor, separate and unequal. And we can see that happening today with this Rittenhouse case, the Ahmaud Arbery case. As Ed said, we can't, just click our heels and clap our hands because these Caucasians have not been sentenced yet. So we have to sit back, watch with patience, with resolve, and with frame of mind to see what is going to happen. But whatever happens, I know we might be disappointed, but we should not be surprised.
That's right.
Okay. So, that's what has been buzzing in Black America. But also, I know we got DJ Rhino coming up, but also what has been very, prominent story in Black America is the killing of a young rapper, Young Dolph, 36 years old, in Memphis, Tennessee.
Yeah.
The hip hop community definitely is mourning his loss. I just want to know our thoughts on that before I share mine. I have so many thoughts on that, but Reverend Roundtree, Pastor Ali, if you want to, speak into that. It's been
He never left the hood. He never left the hood. I respect his resolve to, even though he had made it, so to speak, he stayed within his community trying to bring others up. And a lot of times you'll see when people become self-efficient, so to speak, become rich, they claim they can't stay in the same area because people can't appreciate their fame. But he died where he said it, stuck his flag in the sand, so to speak. He didn't try to leave, and it's just among this generation and past generations. I'm not just going to say this generation, but past generations, when they can't settle a beef, what do? Kill each other. Or if the person becomes too well-spoken, too outspoken, or too famous in the hood, what do? Instead of celebrating them, you take them out. And that's what they did with this young brother.
That's it, Pastor Ali. You spot on with that. They want to silence those who do the best they can to try to make the best of what they can. Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
because
yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, especially with our young young Black men, that if I could duplicate, they had this movie called what was that movie where you went to sleep and a clone of you was made? Pastor, you might know.
Is it Total Recall?
That's one, but there was another one.
Sure.
A science fiction movie was made where the people of lighter pigmentation came up with this idea to it was aliens. It was an alien movie where they would duplicate you. Well, Lord knows, I hope they come to create something where we can duplicate a Minister Abdul Haq Muhammad, the mindset, the ministry, the movement. It's not enough of us. And it's so unfortunate that this young rapper, this young man who did say, you know what, I'm not running out, I'm not leaving, I'm not turning my back on. But sometimes, they have that. There's another saying, they say you can take the man out the hood, but you can't take the hood out the man. That they used to say some other things about that statement. I don't 100%, Baba, believe that. I believe that some of us can be cultivated, and our culture, we should never forget. We should never forget where we come from. We should always be able. I say we should, but we don't. We leave, we go. Those who make it, they keep going. Very few turn around and come back and say, I'm a plant. right where the mess was and I was brought up in. So, condolences to the family of that young man. But my whole thing is, if our mission is to just try to create, and like I said earlier in the show, repetition is the mother of learning. We got to keep saying it, Baba. We got to keep fighting. We got to keep putting it in people's heads. We just got to keep, Minister Abdul Haq Muhammad has to keep on going, keep on saying. The more young men he touch, the more young men he reach, the message will soon, they said, if you throw enough, on the wall, some will stick. So we just got to keep on throwing it. We got to keep on saying it. And like that rapper that's going on to be with, I say going on, call from labor to reward. There are many of us that have gone on and took what we had with us and did not share it. And our history, so important. You're talking about reparations. What do our high school students right now know about reparations? What do they know about when you go off to make it? Please don't forget the folks behind. Who's telling them, please, we need you once you go off to college or once you get a trade to come back to where you're needed in your community? Who's saying that over and over again? I know the mayor is. I know Minister Abdul Haq is. But we all need to have the same message. Earlier, I got off when you were talking about the clergy pastorality that went down and put the pressure. That was as a result of something was said in the courtroom.
Yeah.
That didn't just happen. They didn't just up and decide to go.
No, that was a remark that triggered it.
A remark triggered it. When is something going to trigger us to come together in numbers like that? We get 2 or 3 people together in our neighborhood to try to make a difference. I know we were talking about, I got off course, but anyway, I'm trying to cover everything I missed when I got tuned off. But anyway.
Bring it on back around, country preacher.
Yeah, let me just say this. Because, you have to love truth even if it hurts you and hate lies even if it help you.
My Lord.
And I as a student of the Honorable Minister of Farrakhan, I always try to be diligent and fill out things, but I keep this narrative, rappers dying in their own city. And my thing is, if we take a step back and look at that, I'm saying that most bus drivers die in their own city.
Yeah.
Most teachers die in their own city.
That's right. That's what they live.
It's being spun as if these black men are being killed because they're rappers, but statistically that's not true. Because let's look at it. According to Hip Hop Universe, they said that in 2020, over 200 rappers died. But if you look at black men in particular, in 2020, according to the New York Times, they said over 21,500 people were killed. Out of that 21,000, over 9,913 of them were black. And when you look at black men being killed as it relates to fratricidal violence, that is ravishing our communities and our neighborhoods.
That's right.
Philadelphia, I think, just hit 500 murders. Baltimore, 300 murders. New York City, Chicago. So
all over the
I'm
world.
of the mind that it's not that, and I don't know the particulars, but I'm saying black men are just being killed, not because they rappers or it's just because they're black.
That's right.
That's the norm for black men in America, to be killed in the hood, to be killed in Beverly. I don't care where you are.
Where they live.
I mean, in the hood, maybe there's a higher probability, but black men are just being killed, period. So it doesn't matter if they're rappers, they're athletes, or whatever they are. If you are a black man in America, you are at risk to be killed by another black man by means of a gun. Because when you look at it statistically, in New Jersey, they say that although black men account for 70% of the population, we account for 70% of the homicide victims. So what is the chances of a black man being killed by another black man with a weapon? You 20 times more likely to be killed by another black man in America by a gun. So I don't care what's your profession or what you're doing. Principally and specifically, there's an issue with us as a people here in America as it relates to self-hate that needs to be corrected. And I don't care what's your profession or what's your line of work. If you're a black man in America, you are in danger.
That's right.
With this present frame of mind that we as a people have, as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, the root cause is self-hate. I don't care how you cut it. And I don't care what you have or what you don't have. rich black men are being killed. Black men that have absolutely nothing are being killed. So this narrative that we're spinning about jealousy and envy, yes, all of that plays a factor, particularly in Black America. But it don't matter if you rich or you poor. If you're a black
That's
man
right.
in America, you are under assault and you are under attack.
Attack.
And we
That's
have
right.
to see that as
That's
black
right.
people in America. Yeah, there's certain classism issues, but we have to start looking at this thing, you know,
For what it is.
I think from a more clear perspective.
I would say this too, since you raised the hip hop paradigm, right? And this brother's killing reminds me so much of Nipsey Hussle's killing, right? The parallels are very similar, right? Nipsey trying to stay true to his community, you know, and that jealousy, you know, somebody took him out, and it was just totally senseless. But one of the things, you know, 20 years ago, better than 20 years ago, right? Self-destruction. You know, the hip hop community came together to address the question
Self-destruction.
of so-called violence, in turn to seeing violence and whatnot in the music, and how the music was a factor in influencing that, right? We need a 2021, 2022 answer to the 1990s self-destruction with this generation of hip-hop artists coming together to say that, you know, we can spin our spitting with something other than, you know, I'm gonna smoke that N word and later for that B word and all of that. You know, we can spin some lyrics another way, you know. So I hope that at some point that, you know, that drum is answered, because some of us have been saying that for a minute too. We hope that drum is answered. It's certainly here at All Politics and Local. This is not just a talk show. This is a hip hop talk show. We've definitely been about all of that, been about some of that. So I hope that at some point there's some force that brings our younger voices in hip hop together in that way.
Well, thank you, brothers. Right now it's 6:57. We have to close out. Pastor Ali, Reverend Roundtree, any closing remarks? The floor is yours, brother and sister.
Before I've been walking around City Hall. Listen, we don't have no days off, Minister Abdul Muhammad, you know that. So I've been walking around the office so I don't lose a connection, because if the enemy had his way, I wouldn't have been on the show tonight to be with my beloved brothers. We only do this once a month. And I was like, I'm gonna walk around till the Wi-Fi just kick right on in. And if I have to walk around here the whole hour to stay on the show, every time it seems like y'all getting ready to black out. Closing remarks. I want you to talk about the men's meeting that's coming up on December 3rd, because I know that you are going to be there and it's going to be awesome. I want to thank those who participated in our Be Grateful, I'm going to call it, dinner on Thursday, where we sat and ate with the least of these and some of our seniors. It was a beautiful event that Applebee's has been doing for 8 years. I just thank God for this season. And 2020 was a different year. 2021 is a different year. We're moving into 2022. And I'm going to say a new view in 2022, because all of the things that we discuss on this show, all of the information, I do believe that as we move into a new era next year, Sister Donna, that we're going to be sharing, and I'm going to talk to Minister Abdul Haq and Pastor Ali about it, more information. We can be on here an hour with the topics we talk about and cover so much, but there's other individuals and other information and other gifts and other services that I know that we want to share. And so as we move into 2022, great is behind us, but greater is in front of us. I thank you, Brother Ed and Pastor Ali, and my beloved son in the community, Minister Abdul Haq Muhammad, for letting me share in this time to speak to the people as we cover the most important issues at hand for the time. And that's it right now. That's all I have.
Thank you, Reverend.
I pray in this season that we will pray for people's mindsets.
Yes.
During this season, during the last 2 months of this year, where people are losing it. Pray for their mental aspect. We know this. No police officer had an accident, killed the nurse. Put the nurse in his car and went home to his mama and asked what to do with the body. And you know, that's the mental health aspect.
Yes.
You know,
Lord.
we have to pray that people don't lose it.
That's
during
right,
this
Reverend.
season.
That's right, Pastor Ali. I'm praying for the same. Again, it's 7 o'clock. Brothers and sisters, I pray that Almighty God, Allah, will bless us with good health,
Yes.
peace of mind, that, He would bless us to overcome the anxiety and the grief, from the loss of life that we're seeing on a continuous basis, and that He will heal us expeditiously, and that He will continue to intervene into our life and our affairs, and that He will continue to, bless us with knowledge, insight, wisdom, and guidance as we move into a new year, God willing. So I thank
Yes.
everybody for being on today. Thank you, Brother Ed, Sister Donna, Brother John, for facilitating the show as you always do. May God bless us and may He keep us. Assalamu alaikum.
Peace. God bless.
Walaikum salam. Peace and blessings, everyone. Love you all.
All right, y'all. So that was, of course, y'all know, was the disciples. So coming up next, of course, we're gonna have one of the candidates that are gonna come up. So, John, we're gonna pass it off to you.
Yes, we have one of the candidates who's coming on for the South Ward. It's great because what we love about election season is we get to interview everybody and all of the politicians who are running, because one of the things that we always say is that we believe in civic discourse, which means that we really think that the way we talk about our politics is just as important as the politics itself. And we want to make sure that everybody who's running gets a chance to be able to tell why they're running and to connect with the people. So Newark is having a highly contested race in the West Wards and South Ward, and we're honored to have one of the South Ward candidates with us, Terrance Bankston. So welcome to All Politics Are Local, Mr. Bankston.
Hi, thank you for having me. Can you all hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you well. So what you're running? Oh, I'm sorry. You were saying?
I was just saying thank you. I appreciate this opportunity to come on.
Oh no, we appreciate you coming on as well. So you're running for a South Ward councilman. Why are you running?
Well, those that are familiar with my community or political history know that I pretty much grew up in City Hall, working and volunteering in Councilman Donald Bradley's office, also Councilwoman Mildred Crump. My aunt Kim Gaddy has been very instrumental and engaged in politics here and pretty much introduced me. Also, my grandfather, Earl Johnson. And so I kind of, it's sort of one of those rites of passage type of things. And as I've grown into a professional, I'm 39 years old now. I definitely see being able to serve in office and actually be a legislator and create some policies and make some bold changes and help bridge the generational gap here. It's just something that I think is a calling and I'm destined to do. And so how we got to this year is in 2018, I did step out on faith and we launched a campaign against the incumbent who's not seeking office at this time. And 42% of the most likely voters said they wanted change. And so I remain connected to the base coming in second place. And also just reaching out to more and more community members, more and more voters over the past 3 years who still is looking for real change in the South Ward. And so while we were prepared to run against the incumbent or not, hearing right before our announcement early November that he was not running, sort of put a different light on our campaign. And we hope that the voters will put us in first place this time.
Oh, great. So you talked about wanting to get different policies on board. What are some of the policies that are specific to the South Ward that you think need to be implemented that aren't being implemented now?
Well, there's obsolete policies that I don't think help. There's definitely an inequity when it comes to education and also some of the city services. And so a lot of the work that I want to initially do as we explore obsolete legislation and propose changes as we work with different community folks who like NEED, who's a policy-based group, and we were instrumental with working with them, for example, on dealing with the vacancy protocol or vacancy policy for the Newark School Board. How does that impact the South Ward? Well, we're the largest ward. We also have the most schools, but we also have the most closing schools. And so, again, obsolete or non-existing policies that can help empower residents and help better serve residents, I think are important. But for the South Ward, again, I want to have a stronger partnership, not just with the police department, but also with the Board of Education, but particularly with the amazing nonprofits that we have in the ward, those that have been around like IYO, and then those that are new like the South Ward Environmental Alliance and the Clinton Hill Community Action Group, to propose or put forth a program that will offer civics and governmental classes, like an academy on weekends, particularly for our teenage population and young adults. Those type of things will need policy drafted to get funded, but they don't need policy to get started. And so we've been talking about how civics has been taken out of and government relations has been taken out of our schools. And instead of waiting for those things to come back to schools, we want to partner with nonprofits and some of our education institutions, again, to launch a civic and governmental academy. So that's some of just what I want to do that will be linked to policy, and definitely looking at how we can revamp some things in neighborhood services. But again, those are conversations that also need to happen with the business administrator and the mayor's office as well.
Does anyone have any clarification questions on what was just asked? Then if not, what I want to go to is you talked some about your background, right? You talked some about your biography. Can you tell us more about your biography that qualifies you for this position?
Yes. Well, I'm 39 years old, but I've had the opportunity to serve in 5 different directorships, not just working for the city in 2 different capacities, the city of Newark, but I started out as an associate director for the South Ward Cultural Center, which is now the NAN Center on Hawthorne Avenue. I worked with youth there. I ran summer programming there. I also launched an entrepreneurial program with Pepsi that helped to hire young people in our community and pretty much be scheduled with Pepsi products to sell and profit from, not just in vending machine locations. And one of the locations was the South Ward Cultural Center, but also at our sporting events. And moving on to coming out of Bloomfield College undergrad. I do have my master's from Fairleigh Dickinson University in administrative science. And then again, getting back to undergrad, my degree there was in political science, public policy. Aside of just being civically engaged, pretty much all of my younger life and all of my adult life, coming out of the Bloomfield College, I was able to serve as a family service worker for the County of Essex. Family service workers are those who manage pretty much welfare cases. My workload dealt with single individuals, individuals who got pregnant and then was transitioning to TANF, and also seniors who were retired. I also had teachers who would come and get services during the summer who were on 10-month contracts. So being able to work with those different groups, not a secret. My mom at different points in times was on the system like many other folks. And even in my adult life in college, I've had to be receiving benefits as well. So I like to say I know what it's like to be on both sides of the window. Going from there, I had the opportunity to serve as the Director of Constituent Affairs for the City of Newark. And going into that administration in 2006, there was some feedback from the community that they thought the mayor's aides were pretty much ceremonial or not best utilized. And so we changed that and we created ward liaisons who had direct relationships with the community and was the front line of defense. Folks will call the mayor's office, call City Hall, and not feel like they have to speak to a director in order to get something done. They had confidence in our team and ward liaisons. I also introduced the which is still used around the city, and I sit on coffee tables as I canvass the community, but the Newark Constituent Services Guide, which was pretty much created not to just inform people and engage them on who their elected leadership was, but nonprofits in their community that service them, service centers, family centers, statewide, countywide, locally, scholarship information, all type of resources was in this particular book, and we updated it again every season, fall, summer, etc. Going from there, I was the director of the North Youth One Stop. I still see parents and speak to students who say, you gave my child not just a job, but a meaningful work experience. And I take pride in that. And part of what running the One Stop is not just managing the Speedy program or the Summer Youth Employment program, but is managing the workforce investment arm of the city or funding as well of the agency. And that agency had been sending back millions of dollars annually by not following regulations. There have been several audits done that came back with major fiscal findings. Within the first 9 months, we were being audited under my leadership pretty much every 3 months or so, because the state wanted to know, how did we turn around so quickly? We created an internal auditing system where we were teaching young people and the professional staff, adult staff that work there, how to do audits. So let's catch our mistakes before the state or the feds come in and then find us and take money that our young people and young adults need. And so creating those type of administrative practices, I think, are some skills that can be utilized on the council, and also serve well as a legislator in terms of that. I would like to also say two other points about my experience at the One Stop is having increased the literacy rate by double digits, which was higher than the state's average, not just East Orange, not just Irvington, not Short Hills, but the state's average. And we did that here in the city of Newark. I'm sorry.
Now, when you were saying increasing literacy rates, what are you saying in Newark? Was there a specific population? Could you just give us a little more about that?
Yes. So Workforce Investment Act requires us to work with a specific population. So in this instance, it was younger youth of ages 14 to 17, and then older youth 18. And then because of that time of stimulus funding, we were able to go to 24, not just normally it would be 21. And so we typically put out RFPs, and several programs will come in and deliver certain services that are aligned with the performance metrics of outlined in the Workforce Investment Act legislation. While we have discretion in terms of the type of programs and how creative they can be, we saw that a lot of these programs that were being funded prior to me coming in were salary heavy and not services heavy, meaning the funds were going mostly to their staff, not directly to our students for the purpose of moving them along or having successful outcomes. And so we not only created new programs, but we revamped RFP process so that organizations can be held accountable. If you weren't delivering, you wouldn't be allowed to come back and not deliver for 2, 3, 4 years, ultimately affecting funding. But we also were allowed to utilize our internal staff to create programs. And through that, again, through TABE testing and other measures that are done by the One Stop in the state, we again were successful in not only increasing the literacy rate, but we created for the first time I don't want to say GED because they're called state issued diplomas now. And so at that time, it was very new, but we created a partnership with Essex County where dropouts were able to go on Essex County College campus. Many of them had never been on a college campus before and earn their state issued diploma. But what we didn't tell them, because we didn't want to put pressure out, this is what I loved about this program, is that we did not tell them that they were earning college credits at this time, and that at the end of the program, they would automatically be enrolled in Essex County. And we had 100% success with that.
I know we're Donna, because I know we're running out of time, but Donna?
Just real quick, Mr. Bankston, oftentimes our constituents don't know am I in the West Ward, East Ward? Where am I at, Central Ward? So if you can just give me a circle of where your ward is and what's some things on the ground. I know me in Orange, Essex County is having a major problem with rodents. Have you noticed that in your ward? And if so, do you have a plan on the ground to immediately work on that?
Absolutely. So really quick, the South Ward is, again, the largest ward and the largest voter base in the state of New Jersey. 4 communities make up the South Ward. We have the Dayton Street community, which is just below Weekway Park and adjacent to the Hillside line. and just in front of the airport highway entrance. We go over to about 18th Avenue, and then again to the Hillside line, and then up from Irvington by 78 down again to Phelan Heights and Avenue. That's pretty much the South Ward. The closer to Hillside area is the Weequahic section, and then we have the upper and lower Clinton Hill community. Yes, rodents are running rampant in our community and taking over. When we have so many renters, it's hard to regulate having the proper trash bins, which has a lot to do with it. And we also got to do some more community partnerships, but not just the nonprofits that help blight issues, but also our code enforcement, supporting them and giving them the resources to help abate these problems timely. But one of the things I want to do is implement universal trash cans like the program that they have in Baltimore, Maryland, where we provide the lids, not just for uniform and cosmetic purposes, but these cans are pretty much rodent proof. And that, I think, would be a great start. I would love to pilot that in the South, where we're usually getting things last. I would like to test that, pilot that first.
And sorry about that. I said West Ward. I'm sorry, I was talking real quick, but thank you for saying South Ward 5 times so I can correct that. So thank you. And you're in the heart of a major program where hopefully that whole Freedom Heights will be changed with the train coming down. So maybe next time we can come on and talk more about that. Thanks, Jonathan.
Now, on your way out, I just wanted, I didn't know that you was Kim Gaddis' nephew, boy.
That's my dad's sister.
Yeah, Kim is my heart. I've been trying to get her on, but her schedule hasn't been conducive to doing that. And Kim is an environmental justice pioneer in this community, right? So that's a voice I definitely want to have heard here. So I just wanted to shout her out on your way out.
I'll let her know. I appreciate that. She might be watching.
She should be. It'd be good if she was. Muted, Jonathan.
Mute, I'm sorry.
Oh, Mr. Bankston, I just wanted to give you the last word as we're ending our time. So, final thoughts about why people should vote for you.
The wait for change is over. Real change. We finally have an opportunity. You know, I am a studier of the great Sharp James Almere. And this year marks 50 years of his legacy in this city. I think in this ward, really, and not just in the city, but I think anyone would say 50 years is too long of anything. And John, the current councilman, I think marks the last political son that we sort of gave in the opportunity to. And I think the ward needs a break in a different direction from that. 72% of us living in Newark are under the age of 45. Newark is a young city, and we have one elected official who's who represents that demographics. And so I think adding not just a younger voice or a young voice just to add it, but someone who has the political experience, the government experience, and who has experience with partnering effectively with our community would be helpful for the South Ward. Last thing I will say is that we want to improve senior engagement. We want programs that mirror what we see in the North Ward. Our seniors deserve that too. We want to develop a more collaborative approach with our police department to combat crime, and that's about being proactive. We want to work to better neighborhood services, again, working with our supporting code enforcement, supporting sanitation, and making sure that we're budgeting according to their needs, and assessing that ongoing. And the last thing, and you mentioned Kim Gaddy, environmental justice. I did a lot of training under her and many other great environmentalists from around the state, but addressing infrastructure issues and lead flooding in our ward is important. So promoting environmental justice and making that a part of our daily conversation is very, very important for the South Ward. There is not a candidate that that has declared running to date that I think meet those qualifications or has all of those qualifications and as in tune with them as I am. But we also need visionary leadership, right? Someone who has the vision to push us forward. And I definitely believe I am that candidate.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for coming on. We're going to try to have all the candidates back multiple times. As we said, we believe in civic discourse. We believe in all the candidates having the time to get their message out so that people can make an educated and informed decision. So hopefully you will come back on the show. We will have people who are running against you back on the show so that all of you can get your message out. And we thank you so much for coming on and giving us your time.
Thank you. I appreciate you again. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Take care. So that's All Politics Are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. We are getting ready to go into the next segment, but while we're waiting for our guest, we can talk about what just went on, or things that happened earlier in the show. So far, exciting show so far. I like the topics that were being discussed, and we are getting ready to have a really good show that's really thematically very similar to what you were talking about in terms of domestic violence.
Yeah. Hold on a second.
I heard something in the background, but what I wanted to say is that we started off the panel with our disciples, but one of the things that I wanted to say, but the time got away, is that we have to be reminded of how probably in the 60s or the 70s, and I was listening to a talk show on my way in, of how there's nothing new under the sun. And we're probably going back to the time where everything kind of used to go through the Black church. Like, who do I vote for? The panels, everything would kind of flow through the Black church. You would go through there to get your civic information. And it seems we're kind of moving back in that direction. And I just wanted to know, did the panel see that as well? And if so, how do you feel about that?
And you were saying, I'm sorry, Donna, can you repeat what you're saying?
That if you go back to the 60s and the 70s, at one point, pretty much everything went through our Black church. You know, civic engagement was done through the Black religious for your religious what do I want to say, wealth and just what you needed for that week. But you also went to the Black church for your civic engagement, like who's the panel, who's the candidates that are running, who should we support. You know, those forums were particularly held at our church, and it seems like we're kind of going back to that more so than we have seen in the recent past. And how do we feel about that?
I don't know. Like I don't know if I don't know if we're going back there or churches are getting more energized. I know that there are a lot of other outlets, and we look at many activist movements. They're not as they don't necessarily have to be church focused anymore. I think that there are a lot of, from nonprofit organizations to just civic groups that are coming up that are not finding their origin in the church. So I think that the church is now competing with other influences, but the church is still incredibly important. Like in the last election, when they had they had the basically New Jersey's own version of Souls to the Polls, I thought that was incredibly important. I think that will be important going forward, having the clergy literally take their people to the polls after church on a Sunday to vote, right? And not voting for a particular candidate, but just you need to engage in your civic duty of voting, because that makes the community safer, right? Every time we have more people voting, every time that there are more people who go to the polls, every time Newark's numbers or any community's numbers go higher, that means that more people are the politicians respect that particular community a lot more. So I don't know, to answer your question more directly, I really don't know the answer to whether or not churches are making a comeback in general. I know that there are a lot of other competing things. Like I know Black Lives Matter doesn't necessarily come from the church. And there are a lot of other things that don't, and there are a lot of civic organizations that don't necessarily come that way. But I do think that with this voting stuff, that is going to be incredibly good. Great. We have our guest on. Welcome. We were having a conversation earlier about domestic violence. And we are honored to have McCarthy on, and who works for the Essex County Prosecutor's Office in the Victims Advocate section, and I hear does incredibly good work. I would like to have Zaid do a very brief introduction, just on some of the reasons why he thought it was incredibly important to have you on. But I do think this goes incredibly well with segments that we've been having before about the need to confront and deal with domestic violence. So we have a lot of questions for you.
Yes. And thank you for having me. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here.
And we are happy to have you. And Zaid?
So you want me to do an intro, right? Okay.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be super long, but it could be just
I'm known for these
effective interviews.
Fire them up kind of intros, Pam. So get ready, right?
Okay.
One of the things that we have been dealing with, those of us who have been working in the anti-violence front, is the hostility of a particular victims compensation board from the state that basically had been abusing our community, right? And then in the throes of that, I meet a sister who's a total opposite of the rocks where we were throwing at the state. And that's this queen right here who's been on her post for the past 30 years, right? So in her post, not only has she witnessed the transformation of victim services, but has been a catalytic player in the transformation of victim services. We're working together. She's my teacher in a sanctuary program for domestic violence victims that's a part of their services, and it's one of those things, one of those resources that few are aware of, and in terms of the presence of Black men and being where they should be on these kind of questions where we're underrepresented, and that's what brought me in. So when I put out my blast for the show tonight, I said we're going to have two unsung, legendary folks doing some serious work. 30 years on a post, and most folks don't even know her name. Those who do know her name, though, claim her possessively for what she does, who she is, right? So I'm welcome and pleased to have with us the great Pamela McCarthy. Welcome, my queen. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Ed, you're muted.
So thank you. And what should we know very specifically when it comes to domestic violence and victims advocate program? We had a brief conversation earlier, or an extensive conversation on domestic violence and things that should be done about it. What is going on right now that you think is incredibly important at the Victims Advocate's office?
Well, first thing, I have been with the prosecutor's office for over 30 years. I am 36 years in this field. I started my career in the Union County Prosecutor's Office and will finish here in Essex as a primary advocate. And I'm very, very proud of what we're doing. I have the benefit of longevity. And when I began my career in Union County, we had no conception of really the extent of domestic violence, intimate partner violence. So there were few laws, even prosecutor-based programming. We were working it out as we were working it out. 30, 35, 36 years later, I am proud to say that New Jersey is one of the most progressive states in terms of its prevention of domestic violence laws in the entire country. We are one, I believe, of 2 or 3 states that have indefinite restraining orders, which means that you don't have to go back to court after a year, after 18 months, and reapply for a restraining order and then have to bring proof to the court that you are still in danger. Here in the state of New Jersey, once you are granted your temporary order and your final order, those orders are indefinite, which means that the victim will have to go back to court and petition the court to dismiss the restraining order. Why is this important? There have been numerous times in other states, Maryland, one in particular, where victims, Delaware, New York, where victims have to go back to court and present their case. And what happens is the defendants will lay low for that time, whether it's a year, 6 months, a year, 18 months, 2 years. And then because there have been no new incidences, the court can say, listen, we don't feel that you are in particular need of a continuance of this restraining order. And what happens is that, you know, the restraining orders are dropped and victims, unfortunately, are placed in harm's way yet again. That does not happen here in the state of New Jersey. We have come a long way, you know, in terms of legislation, in terms of access, in terms of policy. We still have a long way to go, but I am encouraged that with the connection and the partnership with law enforcement, with prosecutions, and as well as the community, that we are going to be able to address the needs of domestic violence victims. For me, you know, my vision is to dream. I dream of a world where we don't have to have programs such as mine to address crime victimization, because we live in a community where that is no longer an issue. There are indigenous communities in other parts of the world where they don't even have a definition. There's no word for violence. That is what we're working for and what we are working towards. For those of us who are working in the prosecutor's office, this is about preventing the next crime from occurring. So, you know, for what it is that we do as a prosecutor-based program, I'm here to tell you that we are about our business, and that is to keep people safe. That is to make sure that we have policies, that access to services, avenues, these avenues to service are yes.
I was going to ask for clarification. There were two things.
Yes.
You're saying that as part of your role in the prosecutor's office, it's not necessarily, especially in dealing with domestic violence right now, it is not necessarily just to prosecute people for past incidents. It's actually the most important part is to do certain things to prevent future incidents.
We all serve, and this is why we're here. We are here to prevent the next crime from occurring. Okay.
And so when you're talking about this prevention, and I think that this is probably where everyone really needs to be educated, because especially in terms of the role of the prosecutor's office, most people think prosecutors only deal with crimes after it's happened, right? And you're bringing people to justice. What are some of those preventive measures that people should know about?
Well, one of the things that we have ongoing training. One, what I have to realize, and Baba Saeed, who is not only a colleague, not only a community partner, but is a treasured friend of mine, and has really opened my eyes in terms of what we do and how we address the needs of domestic violence victims. A lot of this has come through our conversations. So the Sanctuary Program, and Baba Saeed is a member of this class, came about from there was a gap in service, and I'll just be really brief. You know, when I approached my my chain of command with this concept of training up and making sure that community partners were able to address the needs of crime victims, those people who would not normally access services would come through our doors. I realized that, you know, there was a whole population that was not being serviced. And when I initially approached my chain of command, and we're going back over 10 years, and we weren't having these discussions. There was a pushback. No, we can't do that. No separation of church and state, because I wanted to equip churches, the ecumenical community. Hey, people, the reality is that folks may not call the police. Folks may not access services through conventional means, and they may be reporting, whether it's in their churches, their synagogues, their mosques, discussions in nail salons and barbershops. I wanted to make sure that when people are in need of services, that there would be a cadre of people there who can address those needs.
So just like there are teachers who are mandatory reporters for child abuse, and you have teachers and you have students who they can go to teachers and counselors, what you were seeking to do in domestic abuse was something similar, like as in having people from the clergy, people in barbershops.
Yes, exactly. Educators, people engaging the 5 sectors of community, whether it's business, it's educators, it's the medical field, it's the law enforcement, it's the sports community. We wanted to begin a dialogue, and most importantly, to train up folks who can address these needs in their areas of expertise. And there was a Sunday morning, my boss called me, and she said there was a homicide of a family in her church. This husband killed his wife, and then unfortunately, killed himself. And the congregation, they were shocked because they had no idea that this was going on. They put on a good face. And my boss said, listen, we got to do something. And I said, listen, I know what needs to be done. And for the listeners, one of the things that we have to do, we have to have things in place before there is a crisis. We have to have plans. We have to have initiatives in place, because when crisis occurs, and we know that it will, we need to be able, to move forward and not thinking, oh my gosh, what it is that we have to do.
So for people who either are victims or people who are hearing about it, what specifically could they access?
Well, we have this training program, which is the Sanctuary program. We have one of the things that we have in our office to make sure that our team reflects the community that it is serving. So we are multilingual. We are a multilingual staff. We speak French, Creole, Portuguese. We have extended hours. So our offices are open from 8 a.m. to 5:30. I'm the person who is on call. I am always available. We have created spaces in our office that are we call them soft spaces, but when people come in, that they feel comfortable, that they are safe. We're getting ready to put victim witness on the road. We have purchased.
What is I'm just going to ask just to slow down for 2 things, right? The first thing you said was the sanctuary program, which was the restraining order sanctuary program. How can someone access that? And what is it?
Okay, so the sanctuary program, basically after a traumatic event, people find themselves in crisis and may need some assistance, and not only individually, but also as a community. So what we are looking, what we have set up is this program that's designed to equip community residents to provide crisis intervention, prevention programs, outreach services to victims of domestic violence.
For clarification, right? Like when someone thinks they call the Essex County Prosecutor's Office for domestic violence, the first thing that people think of is the police will come, and many people are hesitant about calling police. I know that that's something that you're dealing with. So what is there about this program that is different than just calling the police?
Well, we understand that there is a reservation, there is a hesitancy to call the police or to access services through child protective services, hospitals, law enforcement, prosecution, because these are systems of care that have been historically hostile to communities of color, to people that look like me and you. So what we want to do is give people options. So that means that through training, not only, information, but giving people the opportunity to practice their skills that they are able. We are training educators. We are training.
So if I'm a victim, I call. How do what happens?
Well, listen, you're going to be able not just calling the prosecutor's office, not just calling law enforcement, but you're going to be able to talk to people in your community. You're going to be able to talk to folks in your mosque or in your congregations. We have people who work in barbershops, nail salons, and beauty supply. We want to make sure that people have access to information wherever they may find it. So if you're calling, you may not call my office, but you may talk to somebody at your church or at your mosque that will say, listen, we have this outreach program. There are resources that are available to you. And
what are those resources and the outreach program? Like, so I call, I call, maybe I get it from someplace else. I might not call the prosecutor's office. You're saying that there's a program I can call. What is that number and what are the options?
Well, there's a lot of programs that are out there that are supporting victims of intimate partner violence that we are working with. We have the Shawnee Baraka Women's Resource Center. We work with the Essex County Family Justice Program. We work very closely with law enforcement and making sure that they have information. There are residential programs and transitional housing programs that are available in Essex County that can support victims of intimate partner violence. When people make the phone call, I want to make sure that those who are answering the phone have access to resources. We have developed an app. We have information on our website. So we are utilizing social media. We are not, there is more to do, but what we're looking to do is to provide more access to services. So you can start with us. You can start with the prosecutor's office. You can start, with these resources. The family assistant centers are an excellent program. The city of Newark and their violence prevention programs. There are organizations that we partner with that are also excellent resources to domestic violence victims. So in order to access services does not have to necessarily start with the prosecutor's office or even the police department, that there are agencies and organizations out there who are able to assist victims who are navigating these systems of care.
And Pamela, thank you for being here. And there's all different types. There's the just domestic violence type of cases. There's, I guess, the relationship ones. And there's the case we just seen with that's coming to light with the young lady who was missing, but come to find out that the situation in the household was very volatile.
Yeah.
We've had, I think, situations. I'm from Orange where there were cases going on and people just didn't know. We used to have a call-in line here in Orange, a domestic hotline. And I know technology is way past call-in now. Like you just said, you have an app. But, and I know that the Essex County Prosecutor's Office is very, very busy. But getting in front of these, I can remember years ago with the case in Vellsburg with the mother who the Dyfus case, and she had the children in, like storage units. They were, there were so many different types of domestic violence cases. And like you said, people don't see it, or people are minding their business, or whatever the case may be. Like the closest case that we just seen, was there, as you look at the case with the young lady who ran away, are we looking at what can we have done different? Of course you are, but as you look at that case, what perhaps could we have done differently that it wouldn't have to result her running into the arms of somebody else?
And what's available to her now that she is in somebody who is in a position to receive some services.
And I think you talked about early the Victims Compensation Program, and if you could talk about that a little bit as well.
Sure. So, one of the things that we have to get over, ourselves where we think that intimate partner violence, domestic violence is a personal matter, and that we don't necessarily want to intervene. We do bystander as part of our training in the sanctuary program. We've spent a number of hours on bystander intervention, effective bystander intervention. And, we've seen the commercials. If you see something, say something, but so it starts with an awareness. It starts with information and understanding the dynamics of intimate partner violence, and being able to identify those things that are flags. Now, this young woman, 14-year-old girl, and we saw the mom, and we saw her on television. Now, I am not in a position to talk specifically about this case, but it starts with a question. It starts with are you okay? It starts with making sure that people have that have the proper intervention strategies in order to identify someone who is in crisis, and then what do we do after the fact. There was bravo for everyone who put that young lady's picture on their social media, those who handed out flyers, those who did community walks, making sure that people put the information out. If you saw the young woman, this is what needs to happen, and this is how the community, law enforcement, prosecutions, we are all working together. Now, I do know that the young lady and her brother are in protective services. They are being provided with the care, the support that they need. But there are so many others out there, like that. And as a community, we have to make sure that we are all invested in their safety and security. The question about the victims of crime compensation office, this is a state-run organization. It's funded entirely by those who have been convicted of crimes, whether it's indictable offenses, disorderly offenses, petty disorderly offenses. These fines go into, a fund, and they are redistributed to crime victims to cover such things as their medical expenses, counseling expenses, relocation assistance, other emergency needs that need to be addressed. If there is catastrophic injury, there are enhanced services for those victims. So, there's a $25,000 cap for catastrophic injury. There's an additional $10,000. And that money can go to, rehabbing a home, rehabbing a vehicle, so that someone is better able to enhance their mobility. So they have also streamlined how they are reviewing these particular cases, and making sure, streamlining. So when I first started in victim services 30 years ago, it could be years before there was a determination. They are now with the change in the legislation, VCCO is able to pay out for or compensate victims in a more timely manner. That is also a community resource.
And Pam, I don't want to cut you real quick, but there was also the new thing I start seeing on TikTok, where I walk by you and I bump you purposely, and then I do something behind so that you can see a hand gesture. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Okay. Is that something that is valid?
It's all about the information. It is all about, there's a hand gesture. And this is all about community information. Because if someone is giving you the hand gesture, but you don't recognize it.
What is the hand gesture?
Well, I believe you pull your hand in, and I don't want to listen. I don't want to give the wrong information because I'm still learning. Okay. But there are, again, this is all about public. This is all about public information. I think you pull the four fingers in. And it's a twist of a wrist, but you have to be aware of it. We want to make sure that we have information in supermarkets, where people congregate, that there is information in libraries, for example, and even, utilizing social media. One of the things that in terms of vision, is making sure that we can move people, get people out of harm's way in a timely manner. And relocation is not moving people around the corner, down the street and around the corner. But the challenge is making sure that there are networks of services. So if you are going to relocate someone, get people, the person has decided that they are ready to leave their their abusive environment, that there are resources, that are available, whether it's safe houses, it's transitional housing. We are relocating people, outside of their networks. And the reality is, people, you got childcare. There's a whole lot of issues that go into relocation and making sure that people are safe. What we are working to do, as in partnership, is to address these barriers, these challenges, and making sure that people have the resources and have the information so that they are better able to make decisions as to what it is that they want to do. Yes.
I've heard that one of the most dangerous times for people leaving a violent relationship is when they leave, or right after they leave.
Yes.
Are there things that you talked about relocation services, you talked about restraining orders, I've heard complaints that restraining orders are helpful after the fact, but there's some controversy about whether or not they would actually be effective at getting someone off. What advice would you have for someone who is in that stage of leaving or just left, in terms of some specific things or specific services that they could connect with that would both the restraining order and or relocation?
Okay, so let me just say this. There was a study done, and what we as service providers, what we do as service providers, and how we identify what is best and our success. What I found was it is different than what victim survivors, those who are navigating their abusive relationship, how they define success. So I will say this: not every victim survivor may want to leave. I had one woman, she asked me, and I asked her, I said, so, because we not only have to be trauma informed, but we also have to be healing engaged, and that goes to resiliency. That goes to the re-empowerment and the reconnection that victims need in order to make decisions about their situation. I was talking to this victim, and what she said was, I asked her, what. And I actually thought that she was going to say that she was looking to leave. You know what she said? This woman said, I just want to be able to go to the bathroom without the fear that he's going to come in and pull me off the toilet. It completely changed my outlook and how we interact with survivors of domestic violence. We have to allow them. We have to allow them to leave, and when they make the decision, because some may choose to stay, and we understand that. So we have to have these resources, these resources in place. Again, we have residential programs for intimate partner violence victims, emergency shelters that are specific to addressing the needs of intimate partner violence victims and their children. Transitional housing is a huge resource. And Essex County, we do have we have one transitional housing program that is Sylvia's house, run by Access Family Services. So for your audience, there are options for those who choose to stay, and those who are choosing to leave. We just want to be prepared, and whatever decision that the victim survivor feels that is best for his or her situation and those of her household members, we are in the position to support that. We are not in the position to judge and to change their minds according to what we feel is best.
We have less than 1 minute left. We would definitely want to leave you with the final word. What is the most, and whether it be numbers that people can call or the most important thing that you think that people should know?
Well, the one thing that I want to leave with everyone is that there are options for those who are navigating, abusive relationships. You can start with the Essex County Prosecutor's Office of Victim Witness Advocacy. As I said, we are multilingual staff. We have extended office hours. We are available. We have an app. We have a website. Our phone number is 973-621-4689. Our web address is www.njecpo.org. And to be looking out for us, because we are taking Victim Witness on the road. We have a modified van, and we are going to be bringing Victim Witness services to our community. That is our commitment. And I just want to once again thank you all for inviting me to be here, allowing me to speak about our programming. And I want to wish everyone a very blessed, a very safe holiday season. So thank you very much for your time.
And thank you. And just one more clarification. The Essex County Victims Advocate number is 973-621-4689.
4689. Yes.
Okay, great.
And our website, you can access our website also at www.njecpo.org.
Okay, great. You said
www.njecpo.org.
.org. I had .com. Okay.
All right, great. And that's,
yes.
And that's like the actual Essex County Prosecutor's Office, but you can get the Victims Advocate number from there as well.
Right, and you know what? I'm going to give you my cell number.
Not necessarily. I mean, you don't have to give me your cell number on the air, right? Like, or is that a public cell number?
Yes.
Okay, so I could take that down as well, but that would be a public cell number for people to call for cases of domestic violence.
Right, for domestic violence or any victim, any victim of crime. You can call. You can always reach me 24/7. I answer the phone at 2 a.m.
Okay, and you want me to give this number out?
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Just answer the question, Ed. Answer the question, Ed, or let Donna answer the question.
Yeah, Donna, please ask the question.
You're muted, Donna.
You're on a hip hop radio show. So more important than talking about the current events, we discuss music. And one of the things we'd like to know right now, what are you listening to? Your favorite hip hop artist and or group? I see two of you.
I told you she was bad.
So what hip hop artists and or group are you listening to these days?
Oh gosh, Kendrick Lamar. I love music. So whether it's it's R&B, it's jazz, but I like classic hip hop. But I love the message. I love the progressive, the innovation, the creativity. It inspires me. There's a number of groups, but in addition to that, I'm also a reader.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
And Pamela, you have to come back because I know we didn't get to talk about the summer programs you do with the school. So we have to invite you back because you're doing extensive work. And just tell Judge Stevens, I heard him on the radio earlier in his other life about the East Orange honoree. So I heard his interview.
Yes.
So tell him to keep doing what he's doing. So
listen. He's the community prosecutor. And it really is an honor, to work under him, and then put these programs forward. So I welcome the opportunity to come back and to continue to support the work that you all are doing, getting this word out and having these really important conversations, so that we are aware.
Jonathan, as we transition, I have to say, and I don't know if there's any barriers of Judge Stevens coming on, but if there's something about, I just want to say, if there's something about having local people and leadership, he is very serious from our community about what he does. So if we can ever have him on, I hope we can.
Absolutely.
We can make that happen.
And absolutely, that is something that we're gonna. That is something we should plan. We should plan that.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Right. And thank you so much.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Thank you so
much. Take care.
Bye-bye.
That is All Politics Are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. And we had our last guest was great. And again, it was almost like a theme for this night in terms of dealing with and people who deal with issues of domestic violence. I think that is really important that we have a lot more conversations about that as well. But we are going to our next segment, and we have NAACP, New Jersey NAACP leader James Harris on. And Zaid, do you want to give the introduction? Zaid spoke incredibly highly of you, and it would only be fitting to have and just the appropriate introduction as we start talking about a lot of these issues that have come up recently.
Well, Brother Harris is we talk about long distance runners, and both of y'all probably weren't even around when that coinage was phrased by the late great John Oliver Killings many years ago, and I often use that language to describe a demo, better known as Lawrence Ham. This is one of Lawrence's teachers, who's been running longer than Lawrence has, right? And has been an important voice, resource, force for social justice on several fronts, not just with the NAACP, upstart the New Jersey Association of Black Educators. I can remember because I was close to Sybil when I was Sybil Smith, Brother Harris, when I was at Rutgers, right? And I remember when y'all started. That's where I met you. Quite frankly, that's where I met you, right? When y'all started that, But this brother has been out here, has been a force, a very critical, clear force for so many years, and he hasn't been on yet. And we've got a lot of things that have been kind of glossed over, I might say, in this recent local election. And of course, there's a whole lot of drama going into a very delicate situation, I dare say, with the midterms or the 2022 elections. So I wanted to give him a chance to come on in and share some of his wisdom. James Harris, one of the long distance runners in our community for social justice.
In one of the oldest civil rights organizations in America. So
absolutely. That's right.
Yes. Thank you. Hey, Mr. Harris. Mr. Harris called me one night and said, "Who are the Stacey Abrams of our community? Who are they?"
So you
You
were
know what
supposed to
that
have
means?
an
He's trying
answer
to
if he
give
called
people.
you.
He's trying. I know he's giving people jobs when he calls you. That's right. You know what he's doing. So, how you doing, sir?
I am doing very well, and I want to thank you very much for this privileged opportunity to join you this evening. You have very exciting guests always on your All Politics Are Local. And let me just clarify, my voice tonight is not on behalf of the New Jersey Association of Black Educators. Although I served 8 years as the president, I've been out of that position. But I transitioned to the presidency of the New Jersey Association of Black Educators primarily because we looked at what's happening in education, and we are going backwards in so many ways. And at the same time, we're seeing that our young people are not being taught civics, so that they're not understanding the tradition of civil rights and social justice in this country. The most recent election, I think, points out that we are in a real challenge for leadership. We are in a very difficult place for getting equity, inclusion, and justice in this state. We are considered a blue state, but when you look at the maps, you see that red. This state looked like it bled to death on November the 2nd. And I think that it had a lot to do with how our political situation is evolving and how people are feeling about how their vote matters in this state. When I went to sleep on November the 2nd, I thought there was a real chance that the Republican candidate might have won the election in a blue state. And then, of course, the urban vote came in. And of course, once the urban vote came in, the victory went to the person who is the incumbent, a person who says that he served on the national board of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, which is true. But when you look at the policies that have evolved, we've got a lot of work to do. And so I wanted to have some conversation about what that election really meant to a lot of people in the state of New Jersey. And of course, I, as the president of the New Jersey Association of Black Educators, I want to talk about how Black folks kind of saw that election and what the implications are going down from the election.
And that's precisely why we wanted to have you on. So the young brother, Ryan Haygood, likes to tell folks that we are the 94%. And to be sure, that urban vote looks like us, right? Made the difference in the saving of the governorship of Mr. Murphy and saving some other folks and not being able to save other folks who thought they were untouchable, if I might say, in a very plain spoken way. So given that dynamic, then why are we in such a arm's length kind of relationship with the party that's supposed to be representing us?
Well, I attribute it to several things. Number one, if you look at the election and the amount of resources and effort that was put into our community, it wasn't there. I got more mailings in my mailbox from NJA promoting the Murphy candidacy, but very little with the local people. I mean, I live in the 34th, Nia Gill, Brittany Timberlake, Tom Giblin, NJA put out some information, but as far as the Democratic Party, I didn't see very much effort at all, which makes me believe, and I've heard more than a few people say, it appears that the Democratic Party took the Black vote for granted. Now, when you really take a look at who we are and where we are right now, we've got a bunch of young people that are not dedicated to either one of the parties. They want to know, what are you going to do for me now? What are you going to do for me now? We've gone through this pandemic. We've lost our jobs. We can't go to school. We got college debt. So which of the candidates are talking about doing stuff that's really going to help us right now? The other thing that I think is noteworthy is, when most of the time when there's a major election coming up, people assume that people have only two choices. That's the Democrats or the Republicans. I think we are to the point now where a lot of our folks see a third option. guess what that option is? Stay home.
Mm.
And if you look at the analysis of the
And that's a
votes,
dangerous option. Yes. Mhm.
you know, if you look at the turnout on November the 2nd, the Republicans who came out in New Jersey for Trump also came out for Ciccarelli. The folks who went to the polls to elect Biden, those numbers fell off considerably, which means that some of the people who voted in the presidential election didn't have that same enthusiasm, interest, or willingness to go to the polls, you know, 1 year later.
Now,
And I think that's problematic.
The Democratic Party in New Jersey do about that? That's a serious. That's a serious analysis.
But also, just in a clarification, like, but from what I heard, the numbers of Democrats and Black people voting was around the same as it was 4 years earlier, right? And the numbers for white people, especially in the South, was just exponentially higher. Like,
yes.
So is your analysis that the Republicans were able to have presidential level elections, whereas the Democrats had that natural fall off that was higher than the last governor's election, but yet, as always, lower than the presidential elections?
That's exactly what I'm saying, but I'm saying something in addition to that. If you recall, in 2016, Black folks went to the polls in record numbers to elect Obama. The very next year, 2017, in the state of New Jersey, folks elected a Republican in a blue state. And not only did Chris Christie get one term, he repeated that same thing again. So, I mean, all of the politicians I know say that every vote is important. Every election is important. In fact, as I think about the name of this show, All Politics Are Local, that's what it means. But but they put a lot more effort in our community, I think, during the presidential, as they did all over the country. But people kind of came up short in terms of their efforts. I heard some people, Black folks, say, you know, listen, they're not putting any money in our community, so we're not going to work unless they pay us. Now, that's a very dangerous proposition for civil rights activists, because if I got the money in my pocket and I say, well, if I don't pay them to work, then they're going to stay home, then I'm predicting that they're not going to show up. And in my view, that's a form of voter suppression. If you know that you have influence on getting people to vote, come out to vote, and you don't exercise that influence to get them out, are you not suppressing the vote?
So you're saying that if the Democrats are not putting in the same effort, then that ultimately is like voter suppression as well. You're like,
I would say so.
The Democrats are suppressing their own vote by not being as enthusiastic as they are in presidential elections.
Absolutely. If you know that you need to pay, you know, we got into this habit during the Obama campaign. There was money on the streets, so people organized, educated, and got paid to do certain things. I haven't seen that effort come back since Obama's election in 2016.
And Mr. Harris, let me also say that the Republican candidate, I don't know if anybody else noticed, but he campaigned where Republican candidates don't normally go. He showed up. He was in urban areas at every event. And he was really engaged in this election. And there are, you know, people say, well, we know that this is going to go to this candidate, so we won't waste our time. He did not take that approach. He went where the votes were. And I want to say he didn't take anything for granted, the Republican candidate.
Well, not only that, I think that the Democrats have become so dependent on that urban vote that they didn't put much effort out in Warren, Sussex, Cape May County. Those folks, you know, you look at the profile of those folks who's really rallied around Trump. There were those rural, low educated Caucasians. And that's where the rally of the troops went. On the other hand, it looked to me like the Democrats put most of their effort and energy into urban centers. Okay, Essex County, Union County, Camden County, Mercer County, Passaic County, and Union County. That's where the black folks are. The number one, the county in the state of New Jersey that has over 323,000. Listen to this. 323,000 of the 1.2 million black people in the state of New Jersey live in Essex County. Mm-hmm. That's almost 1/3 of all the black folks in the state. You go down to Cape May and you just don't have a whole lot of black folks. You go to Salem County, you only have 2 or 3 towns that has a predominantly black population. So those folks were not really heavily campaigned by the Democrats. They thought they were going to pull out the urban vote. And once again, the 94% was going to show up without a whole lot of investment.
And then with Senator Sweeney, you would have thought that the gentleman, they said what, he put $200 and some sneakers into his campaign. And it paid off for him, going door to door, talking to people, and that right there was really interesting. And as much as we want to say that it's a fluke, it's a once in a lifetime thing happening, but the fact of the matter is he did the door to door. He did this is my first race and I'm going to treat it as such.
Yes.
Which was.
Now the election is done. Is there anybody who's debating that it was the urban vote? And in the state of New Jersey and all over this country, when you say urban, what do you see?
Black people.
Black, low income Latinos. Is there any doubt that it was the urban vote that got Murphy over the finish line? So now let's talk about what the rewards are for getting him over the finish line. Now I hear that there's a guy by the name of Nicholas Scatori from Union County who's going to replace Steve Sweeney as the president of the Senate. Whoa, hold on, wait a minute. If we help to get him across the finish line, why are we going back to the old model of leadership and putting a white male from Union County as the president of the Senate? Particularly if you do your research.
Got some very interesting racial baggage too, by the way. Locally in Linden, where he tried to suppress support for his first black mayor, and of course his hostility towards our own Senator Ronald Rice. Some of us ain't forget that.
Oh, I didn't even know what happened with that.
And just let me put a pause in there. I got my car this morning, and the first thing I heard was Joe Madison playing Malcolm X, The Ballad of the Bullet. And when he was talking about, and I came in on the part about Dixiecrats versus Democrats, and what is the difference, or there is no difference. And I'm like, But go ahead. I'm sorry, Zay.
Yeah, I mean, if you talk to the black folks in Union County and ask for a report card on Mr. Scataro, D at best.
Wow.
D at best. The attack on Ron Rice was not just an isolated incident. Remember, Derek Armstrong, the mayor of Linden, was the effort to defeat him came from the chairman of the Democratic Party. If you look at Jamal Holly's run for the Senate, didn't get the party's endorsement. Okay. And this is an area where, and I've tried to do my research and talk to various people in Union County, and the report card is very, very negative. Now, my question is, why would a person in leadership think that it's okay to appoint a person as president of the Senate who has a negative relationship with black folks when we help to get people across the finish line?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now my question to this is just a technical one, and that's is the leadership in the Senate chosen by the governor, or is it chosen by the Senate itself? Does the Senate vote, like the senators in New Jersey vote for who's going to be the Senate leader?
By the Senate, by your colleagues. Your colleagues choose you.
So it's a colleague choice, right?
Yes.
Like, so,
Mhm.
so is that, so it's not a matter of, so, and that's why the clarification. So it wasn't necessarily a matter of the governor choosing. It's someone who had built political capital within the New Jersey Senate. And I'm just asking, because is that like a, because approaching that problem would be different depending on how that happens.
Well, everybody that I talk to says the governor really is not the guy who's going to be controlling this. However, I haven't found anybody to say that the governor doesn't have influence on it.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Leroy Jones is the chairman of the Democratic Party. But I would think that Governor Murphy and Senate and Leroy Jones has ongoing conversations about where the party needs to go and how they need to get there. I would hope so anyway. So we're in a very awkward situation. We have a governor who sat on the national board of the NAACP, who says he understands civil rights, social justice, equity, and inclusion. But we're going back to the old model of appointing a white male to be the president of the Senate, when black folks, we got 5 black senators at this point.
Now,
2 of whom come from Essex County. Ron Rice, Nia Gill are senior senators. Shirley Turner is a senior senator. Sandy Cunningham is a senior senator. So how is it that we don't get the first prize, and we might even not get the silver medal, the bronze?
The question I want to ask you is, I've been having a lot of conversations about elected leadership and what we want from them. You talked about one of the major issues that's in New Jersey that did not get passed in the last sessions were the Civilian Complaint Review Board having a strong one. I know many cities want to have that. Do you think that instead of talking about the representation of the race of politicians, which can always, like Ken Gibson was a historical example of first black mayor, but many black people in the community felt betrayed for them once he got in office. And there are a lot of long lists of that. Do you think that it might be even a better strategy of like putting the policies that we demand passed before the individuals who be representing us?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you start talking about public policy, if you don't have somebody who's going to carry that agenda, we're going to be very, very deficient. But I would dare say that if you look at Nia Gill, Ron Rice, Shirley Turner, they have a much better record of progressive policies than the guy that they've chosen to be the president.
And a record and a longer history.
And the pushback is only this: if we lead with just having a person in representation, right? Because there was somebody who was a local politician who was someone who was favored by many people locally, who supported a police bill that was rather not progressive, right? Like that actually undermined the entire like body camera law, just ripped it up, threw it out, right? Just with the law that she pushed for passage. And is it that we should start demanding, like, whoever is in this position had better be pushing and better not block, like Sweeney blocked, the Civilian Complaint Review Board? Should we be mentioning that and specific legislation even more prominently than people?
Well, I go back to that notion about power. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. So the question that I would raise in response to your question, are we assuming that if we have a black person in leadership, that person will not be responsive since they have power? You're talking about the president of the Senate has some serious power. You cannot get appointed to any position that requires senatorial courtesy unless the president of the Senate allows it to be posted. The reason why we have 14 vacancies on this court system in Essex County is because they were never posted in the Judiciary Committee which is where Scutari is the chair, and was never posted by the Senate President Steve Sweeney, who lost. I mean, how much beat up can we take when we deliver the votes? Essex County, there's no county in the state that has the loyalty to the Democratic Party. So yes, well, I'm not just saying we should put a Clarence Thomas or a Ben Carson in leadership, but I think we've got better chances of that because just look at the history of the people who are available. Look at the record of Ron Rice. Look at the record of Nia Gill. Look at the record of Shirley Turner, and compare it with Scutari.
And all of that is true, but shouldn't we have a model that pushes policy as well as individuals? As in, like, those individuals have to be some, because again, there is a person who was elected by Black people who supported a police bill that if it's fully passed would destroy body cameras. That was unexpected. But should we forefront, no, this is what we want. It's not just about who, but these are the specific policies that we want. And why I'm pushing that is because we had Obama as president, and many people complained that he didn't do enough because we didn't ask for enough, we didn't demand enough. And shouldn't we start to really push back on politics that stops, or at least that doesn't at the forefront have policies that we need and just individuals?
I have in front of me the Black United Agenda that was put together 4 years ago. It is a public policy agenda that was put together by a coalition of Black organizations, the NAACP, the Urban League, the New Jersey Black Issues Convention. Okay, just a whole Reverend Ryan Haygood, People's Organization for Progress. So the agenda has been presented. Now the question is, where is the accountability at any level? I can write a piece of paper, but can I push it through as a policy issue?
And can we demand politicians adhere to it? As in, do we say that in order to get this position, you have to support all these issues on the agenda and come out publicly for it? If we don't say that, then how can we expect accountability if, in order to get this position, here's what you have to support?
Yes, obviously I agree that. Well, let me put it this way. You know, I've served 8 years as the president of NAACP. Now 3 or 4 years as the president of the New Jersey Association of Black Educators. When I go to Trenton on my volunteer time, very often there are very few people sitting in those hearings that look like me. Very seldom have I gotten any notice from my elected leaders to say, James, you need to be here on this piece of legislation because it's going to be. I have to do that research, find it myself, and I know they know my number. Okay, so I get there, and if I'm talking about an education issue, NJA has 6 people on payroll lobbying the people one way, and there I'm sitting with maybe 2 or 3 people talking about what's in the best interest of Black folks. So yes, the accountability, but what most elected officials will tell you is that after we vote, we don't show up. We don't hold people accountable. I mean, for a person to be sitting in, to do what you say that person is doing about the police review board, wouldn't you think that that person would have lost the election on November 2nd?
Should have.
But now let's talk about what this grand plan is for the leadership of the Senate. Scutari is now being talked about as the president of the Senate. Guess who's supposed to be the majority leader? Teresa Ruiz.
Essex County.
Excuse me. What does she have in terms of tenure and productivity compared to Ron Rice and Nia Gill?
This is another walkover.
I mean, think about this. It's cold outside. So we go out and we stand in line waiting to get inside so that we can enjoy the comforts. So as we're inching up toward the door, somebody jump in front of us and go in first. How does that make the average person feel?
Does the average person, if it's not connected to policy, like you're talking about people not voting, people not being excited. If it's not connected to where the individuals stand on the particular issues, does who you are matter as much as what you do?
I'm glad you asked the question that way. Who's responsible for informing people of what the policy is, what is being proposed in those closed door sessions? How do I know what is being discussed in the back rooms of the Democratic Committee for the state? Do I get invited to that? Do I even get invited to have an opinion before you go into that room? Or you just go into that room and say, it's my way, and I don't have to confer with anybody, and I don't have to tell anybody?
Was that a question?
Do I have a responsibility to tell people what the situation is and how we need to ask me my opinion about what I think is going to be in the best interest, or I just show up and just take my own position and give little interest about what people feel back in the neighborhood?
I think if we do not make demands that people adhere to the policies that have come up with by a series of organizations, if they're not in the conversation, they shouldn't be reelected. I think that there seems to be a disconnect between the policies that our people actually want and what we actually hold people accountable for. As in, it seems like with the NGAA, if you don't vote certain ways on educational issues, they will come out against you. They will run candidates against you. They will have a lot of money going against you. You said that we have this document that, that people that came up by a series of Black organizations, politicians, etc., and have an agreement on it. Well, if there's such an agreement, then why don't we know everybody's stance on it? As in, why aren't they held accountable for it? Why don't they lose elections if they don't uphold it? And I think that to some extent, I do think that often, not that I don't think representation is important. I do, right? But I think that often we put representation over the actual issue to our detriment, which is why politicians can vote against our interest and get away with it. They can vote for a measure that makes all of the legislation on having cameras on police officers obsolete, irrelevant, turns it on its head, actually turns it to be a weapon being used against the community. They can represent Black people and do that and get away with it because we don't really hold people accountable for issues, because to some extent, representation might seem more important.
Well, I'm glad you put the notion of we. Who is the we?
Well, and if you're asking,
where does responsibility start and where does accountability end? I'll give you a perfect example. When a lot of the legislators, when there's a legislative break from the Congress, I read all over the place that, a guy like Pallone will have town hall meetings. I've come home to tell my constituency what I'm doing, and I also want to hear what my constituency want me to do. I'm represented by Cory Booker, Donald Payne Jr., Menendez, and in my local, Nia Gill, Brenda Timberlake, and Tom Giblin. When did I have a town hall meeting so I could get feedback or tell them what I want? What's wrong with that picture?
Absolutely. And what organizations are making these? Man, like, you're right. It is a we, and communities have to hold these. If we are unified enough to have, here are the policies that we want, we have to be unified enough to be able to have real clear lines of communications of, here's what we want, here's what you're going to be doing. If you don't do that, you need to come back with some real clear reasons, or there might be some consequences at polls. Like the NJA does, like all of these other organizations that have advocacies do, right? Like, this isn't like the NAACP should do, right? Like all of the organizations that are, hello? I think he just fell out. We'll have him back. But Zaid, what do you think about that in terms of because I know that might be controversial, and it's not who you are, it's what you do. And I do get that representation is important, but we've been burned by that a lot, right? We have Black people who get in office based on, hey, you need representation, me, but they turn around and they don't support policies that actually, benefit us, because it's not about it, because they were never held accountable for the specific things that we needed.
Yeah, and by the way, the United Black Agenda, as I'm told, there are meetings with the governor's representatives. But I understand there has been very few meetings directly with the governor over the last 4 years.
And the question is, why wasn't this even a consideration? And like, I didn't even hear this brought up in the election, right? Like when you had the election, we had the race for governor, and you had a bunch of white people bringing up critical race theory, right? Like stuff on education that really, in the light of it, to me, doesn't make any sense, because they just don't want the teaching of history, and coding words for Black. But there was never a time where the governor had to publicly answer on any of those issues on the Black agenda.
Actually, he did the first time, John. This document. He actually did have to answer the first when he initially ran for governor. So it did not
the first 4 years.
First 4 years. So it did not come up the second time. Yes.
Did everything on that agenda get passed?
Did everything on that agenda get passed? No.
No.
But he did definitely have to answer to it.
Did he have to answer anything that dealt, like, I know that in Newark and in Camden, the Civilian Complaint Review Board was, for at least for elected officials, that was their main issue, right? Like, I could be wrong, but that was high up on there in terms of a political issue that our elected leaders demanded.
We mobilized the community when it came up to be heard in the hearings, in a big way, and it should have moved, and it didn't.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. I mean, at some point, you can talk about what happened in the summer of 2020 around George Floyd, right? We can talk about what happened all over this country. But guess who is the main people who are pushing back against a police community review board? It's the police department.
Right.
Through their union.
Who get paid in our neighborhood.
That's right.
Now, in a place like Newark, in a place like the state of New Jersey, do the police departments have as much political clout as the Black community? Are there more police officers voting than Black folks?
And definitely not voting Democrat.
Not voting in our specific communities, because they don't necessarily live where they work at.
And even if you're talking about on a statewide level, if the Democratic governor got like even 10% of the police officers, that would be high, because they overwhelmingly right now in the recent elections have been voting Republican.
Right. So I mean, for me, one of the issues that we need to go to war about is, what are we going to do with these white police unions that constantly work not in our best interest?
Is it, and
what are we going to do? I mean, you got people who work in our communities, get paid protecting and serving our community, but when it comes down to voting our interests, goes the other way.
But isn't that a question?
When are we going to take that on as a major fight?
But isn't that issue really what you asked Donna about earlier? When you were like, who's going to be the Stacey Abrams of New Jersey, and talking about organizing massive voter registration campaigns, looking at voting as something that has to happen in every election, and combining that with an agenda for voters, because essentially all the police union does is raise money and they organize, right? They give money to candidates. They target candidates for their issues. They're just much more aggressive with their issue advocacy than we are ours. Is it a matter of the problem with the police unions or a problem of our lack of organizing? Because there are always going to be people who organize. There's nothing wrong with them organizing for their interests, right?
Well, it sounds to me, Donna Kay, you're a consummate politician that I respect a great deal. Do politicians count?
I think yes, absolutely. Politicians count.
If we got a police union that's got 70,000 members, and they're out there pushing an agenda, and you got 125,000 black folks that's going to vote. Which one do you cater to? The 25, the 70,000 or the 125,000?
You cater to your constituents. That's who you cater to, and that's will be the 125. Because as I just stated before, 9 times out of 10, the police do not live in the communities that they police.
And even if they're within the state, they're not voting for like they would never be the people who pushed the Democratic candidate overboard.
Right.
But
so do we leave them alone, or do we call them out and challenge their votes versus our votes?
Call them out.
Yes. Clearly.
I mean, to me, for those black cops in Newark to be paying their money into that union and to have their union constantly going against the interests of black folks. And I guess the same would be for any town, because, the truth of the matter, once you get out of Essex County, you don't have a whole lot of black cops anywhere in the state.
And remember, in Newark, you have 2 different unions, right?
Yes.
You have 2 unions, 2 police unions. Yeah.
But, the point that you make is very, very important, that we have to hold people accountable. And where we are right now is who is capable of organizing, educating, and mobilizing our community. Okay? That's the real question. I remember a guy by the name of Donald Tucker, who never lost an election, and he serviced his base. Okay? But Donald understood that he could not depend on middle-class people with college degrees to get him over the finish line. Let's look at who our community really is and who's really working hard to organize the grassroots persons. Who is doing the organization of the tenants in these towns? Who's doing the organization of the welfare mothers in these towns? Who's doing the organization of the young Turks, underemployed males? As a guy who spent 40 years in higher education, I'm consciously aware that most black folks in this country do not have college degrees. Most black people in this country are nowhere near middle class. But then when I looked at my elected leadership, they only want to deal with people who are middle class. What's up with that? Hard work. Somebody has to organize the folks who don't have a job, don't have a car, and who's trying to eke out a living every day. This whole thing about the pandemic. Why did black folks have such a huge number? Because they were essential workers. They had to get on the bus to get to work. They had to be at the bus stops. Then they had to go into these places where they had to be surrounded by people who were. That's not the life of a middle class person. And I'm consciously, just about everywhere I go, if I don't bring some people with me, everybody in the room is middle class. They drove to the meeting, they can afford a nice lunch at the restaurant. But I think we have lost real interest and willingness to organize poor people.
Base, our real base, our working class base.
And therein lies the problem, that we don't want to take it. To your point, the community meetings, the civic engagement, and we understand that COVID has thrown a monkey wrench in there, but you have to be able to get out and listen. If Obama didn't teach us anything, he taught us how to organize. He started it with this very simple coffee clutch, and it expanded from there. Barbershops, beauty salons, all of that, and how important it was to talk to 5. It was just as important to talk to 5 people as it was to talk to 500 people, and we have to pay attention to that.
Yes.
So,
and by the way,
And then you had, and I'm sorry, and then you have to realize our community too. Our community are working 2 and 3 jobs. So they need the information summarized, received to them in a very efficient manner. They can't come sit at a meeting for 3 hours, listen to people bicker. They need to have the information very concise, to the point, and we need to come in there with a plan, send them out the door, and then we have to continue and let's end up where we started at. As Reverend Roundtree said, we have to be repetitious about what our message is. We have to keep saying it.
Did anybody hear any message coming from the Republican candidate other than that video where Murphy said, if tax is your issue, then New Jersey's not for you? That's the only ad that I saw during the whole election.
Yeah, but here's what we learned, Mr. Harris, when we go for organizing on you have to have at least one message that if people walk away and they want to know what he stood for, they know what he stood for, don't they? They know what his message was.
Yes.
Could they be that concise about Governor Murphy? You know, what was Governor Murphy's versus his role? Because you know what I'm saying? Could they do the same thing?
Well, you know, the Murphy that we got elected has 4 years remaining. He can afford to take a whole lot of risks. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying one of the things that he needs to do is to get his senators to say, let's make history one more time, mm-hmm. and appoint an African-American as the president of the Senate. Mm-hmm. Now, what the chairman of the party said to me is, James, I endorse Scaturo, but if people want to do a grassroots effort to get those people who would normally vote for them to change their mind, then that's what y'all need to do.
So what I hear that you said, and that's what I hear you say is Chairman Jones says, make me do it. That's what Chairman Jones is saying, make me do it.
That's right. And the media, by the way, has given the impression that it's a done deal. This decision is already made. Secure is going to be the president. Terrance is going to be the speaker, majority leader, and Sandy Cunningham may get president pro tem. But that vote is not going to be affirmed until January 11th. So we have until January 11th to tell folks that Secretary is not the guy.
Make it plain. Yes, sir.
You appoint him, then you are saying that you don't care what his disrespect and disregard for Black folks has been demonstrated. You don't care about that. And I'm not willing to let that go down without somebody knowing a bit more than they know right now.
And we know that Pastor Boyer came on here immediately after the election, and he said we need to organize and we need to start making those phone calls and start saying what our demands are. And if that's the case, that's been 3 weeks ago. So we have already let 21 days go by not utilizing them. What are our demands? And a phone campaign is just a call every week. We want this. We want this. We want this. If you said Chairman Jones has said, make me do it, then darn it, we need to make him do it.
And by the way, my position is very different from the one that was taken by the United Black Agenda. Their position was, we believe that the leadership should go to a minority. No, I'm not going to be happy if an Asian gets appointed.
Right.
The Latino senators are junior to all of our Democratic Black senators. So no, be careful what you ask for. I'm not talking. I think that we have earned we've earned the right to have a Black president of the Senate, and we should insist on everybody who has anything to do with it to go and consider that. Otherwise, they should be well aware of the fact that we know that you appointed somebody that you knew had a bad relationship with Black folks, which shows that you don't care.
By the way, the question that Jonathan asked earlier, I just wanted this clarified because I didn't throw this in. We were talking about that bad body cam bill. 4 elected officials in the entire New Jersey state legislative body came out against it, right? 2 are people who we should be considering it very seriously for this post that we're talking about. And that's Nia Gill and Ron Rice. The other two that came out against him was Loretta Weinberg and Brittany Timberlake. Every other Democrat, black, brown, and white, voted for that backwards bill, that backwards body cam bill, and none of them have had the stones to come out or the spine to come out for the bills that we have been pushing for. That should matter.
That should matter. And let me say this, you know, for those of us who are on this call, we pay attention to newspaper and all the social media, but the average person don't. The civics in our public schools are non-existent. So most people don't know what we're talking about. And I think they would have a different reaction if they did know. And I think it's our obligation to educate as many people as we can to what the reality is of our political position in the state of New Jersey. This is one of the most racist states in the United States of America. It's one of the most segregated states in the United States of America.
Make it plain.
Okay. And, you know, I mean, I think too many of us have gotten so comfortable with inequality that it's just part of our DNA. Well, we need to get some type of chemical that can flush that stuff out of our blood, because it's going to kill us at the rate we're going.
And we in Essex County can be the catalyst for all of that. That's how significant in numbers and in seniority in history is our vote here in Essex County.
The only county in the state that has 5 black mayors, 4 people on the commissioners, and 5 African Americans in the state legislature. No other county comes even close.
And we need to act like it.
Absolutely. We will have to have you back on the show.
Good to have you on, sir.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. We're definitely going to have you back on the show to talk about all the stuff about like organizing and how do we get people to do that. What are those steps? What are organizations doing? Donna?
And Mr. Harris, as we leave, we have our DJ on the line. And DJ Rhino asked the most important question of the hour, sir.
We can't hear you, Rhino.
Rhino, are you there? We can't hear you.
Rhino, you and your sound, I'm going to check.
You're the DJ now. You got to have your sound right.
Do it again.
Right.
No.
No.
We can't hear you.
Hear me now?
Now you go.
Peace, Brother Harris. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well, sir. I'm doing well. Well, thank you for coming on the show today, and just spreading your knowledge and wisdom. You know, it is a political hip hop show, so you know we also like to ask our guests, especially if this is their first time, who in out of the hip hop culture would you say that you gravitate to the most, that you listen to? It doesn't have to be anybody from today. It could be somebody, a classic artist, but who do you gravitate to the most when it comes down to hip hop? Who speaks to your heart the most?
Let me make an admission. Not only do I not know the artist, I can't sing a doggone song that they sing. And that's part of my generational separation. I know about Cardi B. I watched the, Stallion. I watched the shows the other night, and I've said to my wife, not only do we not know the artist, we can't sing any of the songs that they're singing until you get over to John Legend, and Alicia Keys, but they're not hip hop folks,
Right.
And that's my generation, by the way. My generation don't even listen to it.
Oh, I hear you.
What,
so you don't even have like a classic. You don't even have like a classic artist from maybe way back in the days, or when rap was still young.
Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder. Okay, these are the guys who had the messages for me. Aretha Franklin, the Temptations, and James Brown had a lot to say.
James.
Okay.
James.
In those days, not only did we know the artist, we could sing along and dance.
Yes.
But Rhino, shout out to him with Cardi B. Cardi B just bought a house in Jersey, so we can, so she paying some taxes over here now.
And she's
Okay,
making her political statements as well. You know what I
That's
mean?
right. With Bernie Sanders, that's right.
So, Mr. DJ, I'm going to have to tune into you more often and at least learn how to pronounce the artist's name. And if I listen real carefully, I might even follow what they're saying through most of the records. Okay.
Well, I'll make
But
sure
when I turn that on in my car, when I'm driving, the result says, "Can you turn to something else?"
Wow.
And
Okay.
I understand this about music. Music is the message of a particular era.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that young people are saying things the way they're saying it is extremely important to know exactly what their message is and why they're sending that message that way. But this is a serious gap that we have in our community. Queen Latifah, she's cool,
Yeah, well, she's one of our greats right here in Jersey. Queen Latifah, Lauryn Hill. That's like, we consider them royalty coming out of
I see.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, James.
Good to have you, sir.
Great having you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
No, thank you, and we'll have you back. We'll definitely have you back.
Okay.
Now,
take care, guys. Take care, Donna.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Muhammad.
Yes, sir.
So,
peace and blessings to you.
Yes. And so Rhino, I know we don't have much time. We have not a lot, but you also there's not a lot that was going on. A lot you had to say. So talk to us.
Yeah, there wasn't too much that was going on. The one thing I just wanted to get out really that was most important, at least on my radar, was this letter that Chuck D wrote. I don't know. I know somebody said Brother Muhammad was going to get into it. Did he get into it today?
No, not today.
Okay. All right. So I wanted to get into this letter real quick. It's addressing the whole Astro World situation with Brother Travis Scott, and they had about eight to 10 deaths, coming from that situation. It was kind of tragic. It was very tragic, and but a lot of people threw a lot of steam and heat towards Travis Scott's direction as if he was solely responsible for what took place. And Chuck D wrote a letter, and it struck me because it's kind of how I felt a little bit, because when you have these kind of situations, there's a lot more people involved than just the artist that's taking the stage. Normally, the artist has nothing to do with it. The artist is there to do what they do, and whoever's handling the premises at that time, those people are responsible for the capacity, for the security, and otherwise. You know what I'm saying? So
now, Rhino, one of the things, because we're right at the very end in terms of time, do you want to save this for next week and just really go into it? Because I think it's not just a letter. There's a lot of stuff with that as well. I think it's a great topic. As in, a lot of people are holding the artist responsible for what happened at Astroworld, when everything that Chuck D said and everything and the stuff that we talked about earlier, I think people don't understand or recognize that. So do you want to have a more detailed conversation about that next week?
More time. You definitely need more time.
You definitely need time to unpack that.
We could do that.
All right, yeah, we definitely need time to unpack that. So the Chuck D letter, the controversy, the ways in which people were talking about and attacking the artist, I think all legitimate. But let's do this. Let's do that next week, and let's unpack it, because there's a lot to unpack in that, even in why people were holding the artist accountable as opposed to the organizers and the police and the fire and everybody who's responsible for making sure that didn't happen. So so let's get into that next week, and we can close it out. So we are reaching the end of All Politics Are Local, and so we just want to any last minute very, very brief statements for anyone else about stuff that's coming up next week and stuff that we want to really talk about and not talk about, but just remind people about.
Two things very quickly. One, December 2nd, which is next Thursday, we've got a bus going to Trenton for a legislative day of action to lobby elected officials and to rally at the State House around the CCRB bill, police reform, reparations, and reproduction rights. People's Organization for Progress has got a bus leaving City Hall at 7 a.m. Then they can call 973-801-0001. I put it in the chat. I want Mike to put it up real quick before we go out. And finally, so on a heavy heart, tomorrow's going to be a heavy day because it's the funeral of the janaza for Malika Shabazz. Malika Shabazz was one of the twin daughters of Malcolm, who we lost on November 22nd. Her janaza is tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. at the Islamic Cultural Center. Thank you, Mike. At the Islamic Cultural Center on 3rd Avenue at 96th Street. So it's going to be a heavy day for the Shabazz family. I just want to extend my love on behalf of the Malcolm X Commemoration Committee, my own relationship with the Shabazz family. I'll be there personally, and we're all encircle that family under this very painful moment for them.
All right, Donna, and then Rhino.
And just real briefly, shout out to the city of East Orange as they will be doing the East Orange Hall of Fame, and specifically to Karen Hunter, who will be inducted into the East Orange Hall of Fame. So shout out to Karen Hunter and congratulations.
We have to get Karen Hunter on our show as well. I mean, you mentioned her a lot. You talk. I know that you like
Carol
her.
Anderson's name came up. Chris has had contact with her.
Good. And DJ.
Yeah, tomorrow, check me out, 3 p.m. on twitch.tv/RhinoCMZ for the shakeup with CMZ at 3.
And you can put that in the chat. And you can put that in the chat too, because we want to be able to promote that as well. Do you have a theme for tomorrow?
No, tomorrow's going to be a surprise. Tomorrow's going to be a surprise, yeah.
Okay, good. So it's not like it's going to be like a Black Family Day weekend or anything like that. And I know, Zaid, you had there's a new term, not a new term, but a term that you were talking about for the use of Thanksgiving that you're saying that everyone should.
Khalid Abdul Muhammad gave us Jiname, a new African alternative Thanksgiving. I used to do ceremonies. I didn't. I think I had Divine Allah, one of my former soldiers. I trained him in how to do it. But Jiname is a new African alternative to Thanksgiving, meaning not to overlook or to get caught up in the colonial dimensions of Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is a holiday of conquest. For our Native folks, it's a day of mourning. So, we try to get our people to pull back from that and embrace our ancestors as survivors of the conquest of those folks who came here and took this land.
Okay, so thank you for that as well. And we will see all of you. We'll see all of you next week. DJ, did you put the Twitch in the chat?
Yeah, just threw it in there.
All right, cool. And all right, so I'm gonna make sure that's there. So All Politics Are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. We are that's another week. We are heading out, and so we thank all of our guests who came here. And tonight we had a great show for this Friday. So thanks again. And good. I was kind of stalling until it got put up there. And DJ Rhino, make sure to put it up there so everyone can see Twitch TV tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock.
Yep, 3 p.m.
At 3 p.m. All right. Thanks a lot. Talk to you soon, man.
Peace.